I'd like to welcome you all to the Cleaner Communities Overview and Scrutiny Committee of the 5th of November. And I'll remind you that this meeting is being webcasted, and would members please use the mics when speaking. Thank you. We'll start with item 1, attendance. Would you all please sign the register as usual? Second one, apologies for absent. Jackie, any apologies?
Councillor Fiona Cross, Mr Gwyn Smith and Councillor Wayne Tomlinson.
Thank you, Jackie. Item 3, declarations of interest. Over to Tim James for this item.
Thank you, Chair. I've spoken to some of the members already. I'm not anticipating there'll be any declarations. If members have any questions, I'll take them in a moment. And just to remind members that if there are any declarations made, that they should record those in the register as well as their attendance. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest? None at all. Good, good. Right, item 4, minutes of the last meeting, 23rd of July. We'll go through it. Page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, 5, and 6. They're actually pages 5 to 10 on your agendas. Are there any questions or comments? Do we agree it's a true record? All of you? Thank you. Right. Next item. Update on actions as agreed at the last meeting. That's page 11. I think it's over to Jackie. I think you got a verbal update, Jackie?
Yes, that's right. Chair, it says updated meeting on the report, and it's just to let you know that other councils that have rolled out skinny bins have either received grant monies from Welsh Government or RAP, the Newport and Neathport Talbot, or have prudently borrowed. And that is the update from the officer.
Thank you, Jackie. Councillor Ashley, you got a question?
Yeah, not a question, it's an observation. The item 6.5, Dana Rice, and invite members to company officers on visits. I went out on the secret shop with her for a couple of hours. It was on the bins, etc., around southwest Cwmbran. It was really, really interesting. I suggest if other members get an opportunity to go out there. The most striking thing was the fact that the percentage of recycling that was being done becomes very apparent. I'm sure Giles knows this as well because he's been out on the lights. If you actually go out, you can actually see it physically on the road there. If you drive around and have a look, you can see the same thing. But on Black Box Day, Black Bin Day, if you see the amount of stuff that's put in black bins and put out, it's so striking. It's worth you just going out and having a look.
Thank you for that.
Sorry,
yeah.
I didn't really grasp what point you were trying to make. Let me ask the question, Stuart, first, and then you'll know how to answer.
I was just commenting on the invitation of Dana Island to invite members to accompany officers on site visits when relevant, and she invited me out on the secret shop. Okay?
Yeah, thank you. I didn't understand that bit. I didn't understand the point you were trying to make, because you talked about black boxes and black bins, and you talked about stuff.
Brian.
Well, hang on. Let me ask the question, and then you know what question I'm asking. And were you making the point that a lot of stuff was left out, which was not collected, which you could have? I could have interpreted that as what you were saying.
Sorry.
Or were you saying that there was a lot of recycling going on with the black boxes, but you also mentioned the black bin, so I wasn't quite sure.
The point, perhaps I wasn't being clear enough. The point was, in the report that we had to council and had in front of this committee, the percentage of recycling that was done here was about half. And it means when you actually go out on the street and have a look at it, some roads you see half recycling and half in the black bin, i.e. half of it's not being recycled. And it's very striking that you can go down a road in some areas and you can just see black boxes only down one area, and then it's all in black bins and there's nothing being recycled. That is extremely pertinent when you actually go out and do the secret shop. People aren't recycling in some roads. It's very, very striking. That's the point I'm making. Does that make sense?
Right, yes, I think it probably does. No?
Yeah.
Right, thank you for that. Anything else on agenda item 5? No, right, thank you. We'll go to agenda item 6, summary of executive decisions for scrutiny and review, and they're on pages 13 to 28. The first ones are decisions of the Cabinet, decisions of the Leader and decisions of the Deputy Leader, decisions of the Executive Member for Neighbourhood Services, no decisions for 4 and 5. 6, decisions of the Executive, Chief Executive, Deputy Chief Executive and Assistant Chief Executives. 7, key decisions taken by Chief Officer Neighbourhood Services. There are rather a lot of those. Page 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26 and 27. Are there any questions on any of those?
I'd like to go back to... Sorry, Chair. I'd like to go back to page 25, decision NS/214-777, the Green Dog Walkers. Be interesting to see what the outcome of that is in regard to the Falkirk Council undertaking the Green Dog Walker scheme. I think that would be very interesting to see the result of that, certainly for this committee's chair.
Yeah, perhaps we can have it emailed to us all when it's available.
Yeah, I think it would be very useful.
Right.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Can we have that, Jackie? Thank you. Anyone else? Any questions? Right, we'll go on to agenda item 7, if there are no more questions on that item. Yes, yeah. Can you ask the officers to come in? Jackie, thank you. Right. I know. Yeah. Right, I'll welcome the officers now, Kath Thomas, Dawson Evans and Katie Gates. And I'd like to remind you this is being webcast this afternoon. So we'll look at the report first. Do you want to take us to the report, or shall I just say a word about our visit to the Technium? Yes, okay then. I went with Mr. Alan Williams and our 2 officers to the Technium Centre in Cwmbran last Wednesday, 29th of October. We met 3 business people. We met them for about an hour. Overall, it was very positive. And at the end, we thought there were some areas for improvement in relation to marketing and the opportunity for these businesses to do business with other local authorities or our local authority and other local companies. But it was a really positive experience and well worth doing. So, and I do thank you for taking us around at such short notice too. It was very positive. I enjoyed it. Thank you. Right. It's over to Kath now. Kath Thomas, for your report.
Shall I just give a little quick overview
Yes,
of the report?
yes. Just a few minutes, please.
I won't go into it all, obviously.
Yes.
What we're trying to scrutinise today is how well the economy and enterprise and strategy is working, whether Torfaen are receiving a return on investment, whether Torfaen are offering the right financial grants to attract, support and retain small businesses, and what is being done to attract new businesses. So that was the sort of information I tried to put into the report so that you could see the type of work we undertake and for you to scrutinise those activities. Of course, I think it's worth noting that the enterprise and economy strategy is obviously corporate-wide and it has lots of strings to it, and that this report focuses on the business development element of that. As I said, I've given you a bit of background in terms of what's happening nationally, regionally and locally, the sort of product we offer, some statistics, some comparisons, and the rate of return we've worked out for you to see, which I hope you agree is pretty good.
Yes, thank you. I'll just remind members, the key question to be answered by the scrutiny activity today is, what is the impact of the Torfaen Economic Enterprise Initiative, and is there a return of investment for the local economy from the investment into new companies, which is more or less what you just said. Right, we'll go straight into questioning. You've all got a copy of the questions? Yes? I'll give the first one if you like. We are aware that there are a number of business events, stroke exhibitions, held across the country. Do you always attend these to market Torfaen, or is is funding a barrier to attending?
We do go to probably more local ones, things like Cardiff and Birmingham. And there are other shows, but obviously there is a huge financial implication on attending those events, so we're restricted by the funding that's available in our budget.
Looking on Twitter, which I do quite considerably, as you're well aware, because I see you there, what are the most important events that you would go to locally and possibly sub-regionally?
We usually go to the ones in Cardiff, I think, is the ones that's been mostly attended. Does Dawson want to?
We tend to do the South Wales Chamber of Commerce business event in Cardiff. We do the Welsh Government ones that are held locally. As Kath said earlier on, it's very difficult to go wider than that because of the cost implications. I have looked at one in Olympia quite recently, which we decided not to go on because by the time you put the accommodation, travel costs, etc. Into the equation, then the cost to actually attend becomes towards the prohibitive side of it. The other thing that we do when we go to events, we always look at what we've got out of it at the end of it, and if we don't get definite leads, if we don't get the inquiries, then it's very, very difficult to go more regionally. So we tend to target the local ones, and a lot of it is all about having a presence, because these events are very difficult to judge. You're almost damned if you do and damned if you don't. You're damned if you do because of the cost, but if you don't, then people wonder why you aren't there. Where are Torfaen? And it's very, very difficult to make that judgment call. So because of cost implications, we tend to go South Wales wide. If we don't exhibit, then we actually attend the events as to look at what's going on and see what's going there and try and get some business that way as well. So it's a very, very fine balancing act, and it's very difficult to go wider than the local area.
We also have attended events in London where we've shared it with things like Visit Wales, and that's a cost-effective way of doing it as well. So we do that type of activity.
Right, thank you. Alan Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I hear what Dawson said about that. He said essentially we do measure part of that. If we measure it, then surely we can see whether we get a definite productive outcome from it. And if we are, then we should go wider. If we aren't, we should question what we're doing anyway. Because I do worry a little bit if we do stick to South Wales, because I would say a lot more people in South Wales know about Torfaen has to offer than someone in Birmingham or London or wherever it may be. And I just wonder whether we do really measure totally what it does do. There is the element, I will say before moving on, that you are damned if you do and damned if you don't. You'll be seen to be at some of them to know that you're in the game and looking for it. But surely if we measure it and we are successful, then we should move on. If we've got some that are unsuccessful, then we should stay out of those and say, well, let's spend our money more wisely elsewhere. So where is that real measure?
To come back on that one, it's been such a long time since economic development in Torfaen has attended anything outside of the South Wales region. Right? We don't have anything to measure what we've got out of things in the past. Right, so to make that judgment call, when we look at the local ones, then we do get inquiries for grants. We do talk to our local businesses because it's a local thing. We do get inquiries from other businesses throughout South Wales, and we've got those measurements for the ones that we've attended. But as I say, for the wider ones, it's been such a long time since we've been to anything, I can't lay my hands on any measure to actually say, does this justify the cost? And the only way we're really going to do it, in answer to your question, is we'll have to test the water one day and actually go and try one.
Well, Chair, I think you're right. Unless you do it, you'll never have a measure, will you? But, I mean, what I'm saying is if we measure what we're doing locally to see what we can go out of that, we've got to measure that, yes, it works, or no, it doesn't. It would give us some grounds for optimism, if it does, for moving into a wider area and trying to attract other businesses into there, because I think from the visit to Technium and other issues around, we do have a lot to offer, and it's how we get to that. But I think it would be nice to see what that how we measure ourselves on this current spend.
Many of those leads that come to Technium and indeed Torfaen are done through Welsh Government, because of course they've got the bigger mechanics, if you like, to market the area. They, of course, do it on a South Wales or in the Welsh arena, but that is why the Technium is quite successful, because it does offer that soft landing that companies are looking for, and we have a real good relationship with Welsh Government. I think it is interesting to note that we used to be part of something called Cardiff Capital Region that did a lot of marketing and goes to exhibitions like that, and we used to put funding into that. We weren't sold as Torfaen per se, but as an area. But again, businesses look at an area rather than just, a borough, if you like. Now that, unfortunately, has ceased, but there are groups now working on the new city region, if you like, where inward investment, and that's what you're talking about by marketing right outside of South Wales, would be taken on that broader region, and that's when it becomes much more cost effective and indeed more appealing. So I don't think it'll be dropped totally. I think it has for the time being, but I think as we move forward, the City Region Board, I'm assuming, along with the South Wales directors, will be looking to see how we would continue to do inward investment. I think it's an important part. I think Welsh Government have an inward investment team. We work quite well with the ICT sector within Welsh Government. So it's not that Torfaen doesn't do it per se, because we don't. We haven't got the funding, but we are in partnership, and we can hopefully in the future get out and do some more inward investment.
Councillor Ashby, you want to come in?
Yeah, very briefly, I don't know if this is a brief answer to this one. How much support do you get from the civic function, borough mayor, community councils and the on the business community, because obviously they've got an interest in this, because it strikes me that that's somewhere where you're a very small team with a limited budget, you might get some reach out of this. I wonder, because that seems somewhere we could make some recommendations here.
Absolutely. I mean, I think all members that I deal with are very supportive of this. And they're always, you know, if they learn of anything about businesses, they will ring us up. It would be good that they are championing it and that they can contact us. Their support is obviously well worth having. But again, you know, if we can give members information, a pack or something that could make them do this better, then maybe that is something we could look at.
Thank you. Any more questions on this point? Thank you. Councillor Morby, will you take the second question, please?
What processes do what processes do you use to reach out to new businesses and offer assistance to them?
To new businesses, we generally, as I said, we were part of this capital city region. That was going out right across the UK, really, for inward investment. We've got websites. We've got the Springboard, as I said. So in our marketing, we pretty much try to get it out to as far as we can in the UK. And the website obviously can get out to the world, if you like. Good relationships with Welsh Government, because ultimately they will be the ones that are going to be in contact with big businesses. And I think it is all about rapport and understanding and what the business needs. And usually, to be fair to Welsh Government, if there is an inquiry, the Torfaen is one of the authorities that they will contact and take the businesses around. So it's a mixture of all marketing, through leafleting, through events, but also through contacts with Welsh Government and other agencies, really.
When I came to look at this particular report, I then went on to the business development website, Torfaen's. Yeah. And actually that was the first time I've looked at it. Right. Since it's been revamped. Yeah. I'm not absolutely sure when it was revamped, but fairly recently, I think. And I tend to be pretty good about reading emails and checking if there is an email about something which, like this, which might show that, and indeed, when I did look, did show that we are actually got a pretty sophisticated website there, which got a lot of information. But I wasn't aware, I don't think many of my colleagues were or are aware of that. And, okay, our ignorance perhaps doesn't matter too much, but, well, it does a little bit, I suppose, but does that perhaps indicate that we're not making enough publicity of the fact that we've got a website which has got an awful lot of information on?
Absolutely. We'll try and take that on board in terms of member understanding and seeing what's going on. The website was launched at the Digital Festival that was in Blenavon, so it did have quite a big event on the back of it, and that it was put out there. We had software so people could go and look at the internet and the site on the day. So it did have quite a big, but with all communications, it doesn't always get to the right people. But yeah, in terms of members understanding that, we could probably email out or get the member's secretary to email out to all members to know that, that event had happened and that it was a good site up and running, really.
Perhaps if I come on a slightly different slant, I think Brian meant it this way as well, as for members, and that's to other businesses. If members don't know about it, there must be many, many other businesses who don't. I just wonder whether proactively, I know you can launch it here, there and everywhere, but whether proactively, we have a number of business directories, and we send this out across the UK to companies with, our website address on there. Because one of the things that we did find from our visit to Technium was that a few people found out of it because somebody just told them, or they were talking to somebody by accident. It wasn't always that it come proactively from Torfaen. And I mean, that's not a criticism, because they're very, very positive about the support they get from everyone. And I think it's true to say it's extremely positive. But I just think there's an opportunity for us to proactively go out. Because I think very often that a website is kind of reactive. You come across it or you don't, or you go looking, rather than push it under somebody's nose, if you like.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I mean, we do it in terms of using social media. When we have our business club, obviously we're promoting it there. So lots of businesses will be aware of it, but quite rightly there'll be lots of people who are thinking about businesses or not in the area that might need to know it. So it's about how do we effectively get our website out there at a reasonable, cost-effective way. But we'll have a look into that, and maybe Dawson can add to it.
Just to add to what Kath has said, last month that website received 950 hits, and the average spend time on our website was 1 minute and 30 seconds. Right, so there are numbers going to that site. We do realise that the 1 minute 30 seconds could be improved. We drive a lot of our traffic through social media campaigns. The Torvine Business Twitter account has over 1,000 followers on it now, right? And that's work that's been done to drive the stuff to the site. But I do take on board, and one of the weaknesses of websites are that it's reactive to inquiries. It doesn't generate inquiries, but there are some quite sophisticated social media campaigns behind that now, and we drive a lot of stuff to it. The website is working very, very well at the moment, but I do take on board that there is scope for improvement, and that's something that we're striving towards now as we speak. So, but it is starting to work, and it is getting out there, as the statistics prove. And the 930 hits, if I go, there were no repeats. The repeats were taken out. They were fresh hits for that month.
Yeah, I think, sorry, Chair, I think we need to be slightly careful about that, because some of them would be people like me who would use that for information, as evident came recently, and Brian's just done, and it's the businesses who are looking to, move into Torvine or are thinking about it. It's going to those businesses, I think, not people who maybe they're existing ones in Business Voice who use it for info, because it is a good site and very easy to get to and move around. So I would suggest a lot of people like me do use it, and I think it is getting these businesses to develop more, I think, is the point I'm making. Thank you. Thanks for your answer.
Councillor Davis and then Councillor Ashley.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wondered whether on Twitter, if you utilise the Follow Friday, which is hashtag Follow Friday, which everybody who uses it just put hashtag FF, and you just tweet a load of different people your website, and what they do then is pass it on to all their other friends. We use it quite a lot on Twitter, and it gets you out and about, and if it's a site of interest, it just keeps going round and round, and people retweet it, so you get a lot more hits, and a lot more people can see exactly what you're doing, and that's free, and it's a good thing to do on a Friday.
Comment on that?
The comment I'd make on that is thank you very much, and we'll make sure we start doing that.
Councillor Ashley.
Yeah. What I'm interested in is obviously we've got the word business there. That implies a whole lot of things in there, as you well know. Obviously, start-ups, people inquiring, and established businesses, and that was some of the questions I think we were looking at in terms of people existing businesses and what support. There's a whole multitude of sins in there. Do you know, with your nearly 1,000 hits on Twitter and your other inquiries, what all that lot is?
I can't give you the specific figures now, but as part of the analytics, we look at exactly what pages they're accessing and exactly what zones that they are entering the website through, because it works off landing zones. So we have got those figures if you want them, no problem at all.
Yes, that would be useful. Thank you for that suggestion. Anybody else like to come in? Right, we'll move on to question 3. Perhaps Councillor Seaborn could take that one, please.
Thank you, Chair. Afternoon, Kath and everyone. Do you know what premises are available for businesses in the borough, and how do you market them?
We do have a business directory, and we do have what premises are available, and they're on the website. And again, they're through marketing in terms of our leaflets, our exhibitions, and the website. And actually, we are tweeting properties as well now, lately. So we try and do that through social media too.
Thank you. Yes, you can go ahead, Councillor.
Yeah, I've got a thing about this, as probably Dawson knows anyway, because we've got the wonderful Tachyon building, which is a great thing to have, and still have, because I know some of those have got. What sort of innovation and incubation other than that we've got? Because I've been having conversations with my colleagues down Community Spurs, so they've got a development office down there. It would be useful to have different types of, and other than things you market, for actually innovating, like Tachyon, but other types. I mean, obviously we've got things like CCYP, which I know about, but we've got other types of things like that. No, they're good. Oh gosh. It's daisy chain, isn't it? No, this thing's gone down. At the top. Yeah, that's what it was. Daisy.
Incubation, yeah, just remind myself.
Yeah.
Currently, the Springboard is very much an incubation centre, but it's for the high-end knowledge economy type and quite innovative and indeed risky businesses, so, in terms of funding and supporting them. However, we are trying to do a couple of other initiatives which help start up and incubate from the roots, if you're grassroots type businesses. And we have got an initiative running currently, it's just been launched, which is called the Enterprise Facilitator. And this is where somebody actually lives in the community. They're not necessarily 9 till 5. They don't sit in the office. They can meet somebody on a Saturday morning. They can go and see a single mother on a Monday morning after school or whatever to talk about any business opportunities. And that's where we work with the regeneration team, economic development work with the regeneration team. So, for example, with the regeneration of Pontypool, the indoor markets and some of the shops that we will try to bring back to residential and business use could be used for that sort of initiative in the area. The corn bin in Abersychan is also something that can be used as an incubation for people who'd like to set up businesses. And indeed, we're working with somebody called Indicube, which is a company that rents space off us, if you like, and then they rent it out to people who just want to start up a desk, a telephone, access to a reception or whatever. So it's a turnkey little operation where they can just concentrate on trying to set up their own businesses. But with the enterprise facilitation, it's a bit more than that, because the killer of businesses is isolation usually. It's being on your own. You might be really good at producing a product. That doesn't make you great at marketing, and it doesn't make you great at accounts and business finance. So really, what's really key to business is having that support. And under the enterprise facilitation, we have a board of business people who are there to offer and mentor these startup initiatives, and indeed some of them have even offered help. So there may be a little person who's written a book and they say, I don't know how to get rid of these books, I don't know where to sell them to, and actually there's somebody on our board who said, I'm going to a book exhibition, I'll take this person along with us. And of course, if they needed a little extra marketing help and assistant, there's lots of people on there that understand marketing, and there's a couple of business people who understand financial things that can help the startup businesses with that sort of initiative within their own business. And that's really, really important, because they're the things that these startup businesses will fail on. They may be great at making something and they'll be the best person on earth to talk about it and understand it, but that doesn't mean they can run that as a business. And actually, there's been examples in Blaenau Gwent, for example, where two people have met, where one has got great marketing and financial skills and the other's got great product development skills, and they've set up business as a pair and is going on to success. So, it's making those links as well. So that's the type of thing we're trying to develop in Torfaen, and we've only recently launched that, I think, about 3 months ago. And this is all done by word of mouth. There is no huge marketing of this. It's not meant to be. It's meant to be native, so that community trusts that business person. You know, it's about developing relationships and networking, and then bringing them and their project along to that board of business mentors, really.
Councillor Evans, would you come in?
Thank you, Chair. Going back to the question that was asked about the premises, Chair. Kath, can you give us an example how you gather the information of premises? I assume you work with asset management, and you also mentioned regeneration. Could you give us an idea how you gather the information on the premises that are being sought?
Yeah, obviously asset management will keep a database and you know, all of the assets that we own, but we also have a database through the planning department where they're updated with agencies, and agencies actually will email us with their information, get us to put their properties on our site. So, you know, things like Robert Chapman, for example, he'll be sort of marketing a big unit down at Llantarnam. He will send us the information, the marketing materials, and say, can you put that on your site? So we try to work with as many people as we can to get a good picture of what's available in Torfaen. We can't cover everything, because if people don't give us that information, then we won't have it, but we do try to keep those links. And there is that database that they do put into, so therefore we can put it up on our website.
Thank you, Kath. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I think
just wanted to add to what Kath has said, that we actually physically contact the estate agents that deal with local business premises to make sure that we are up to date with what they've got on their books. And we're also working on the website so they can actually update it themselves rather than us having to chase them. So that's another development that we're doing on the premises side.
Thank you. Anybody else want to come in on this one? Yes, Mr. Williams.
Just one thing on the Chair. I just wondered if it's possible to make that element of the site a little more attractive, or is that not cost effective?
Kath or Dawson.
That's okay. So, yes, there's a wonderful one of Technium on there when we advertise in space, then Technium, and then everyone is just to blend these premises on this road and this number of square feet. Yeah. Just in the addition of a picture maybe, which does help to do it, but that might be, you know, not possible. But I just think it would help to market certain sites if you can actually see what it is.
It would, yes.
Just to come back on that one, thank you very much for pointing it out, but it is something that we will be looking at and working on. It is a valid comment.
Thank you. Question 4, can I ask Councillor Marshall to take it? Thank you.
Dawson or Kath, do you think, are we providing the right type of premises to attract businesses into Torfaen, do you think? You know, it's bit of honestness, isn't it?
It is really, because the premises, we've got what we've got. So that you know, the premises, we have what we have. You know, there's nothing we can do to change about that. I think we've got a fair range of very high-tech premises, very clean premises, and we've also got what I call dirty industry premises, because what's really important to this economy in Torfaen is these very small manufacturing company, little engineering companies, and they don't want particularly, you know, nice, clean, posh offices. It's very much a dirty environment in others, and I think we have got some of that, and indeed it's pretty full, in fact. Could we do it more? Probably, but I think what's restraining us is potentially funding, and some of the sites in our LDP now, the ones that have not been brought forward, are the more complicated ones, and you know, that is something that we need to tackle, and you know, I think that is what the Planning Office is trying to do over the next few years. So it really is down to funding and having the right land to expand or do other accommodation, really.
Councillor Ashley, then Councillor Davis.
I have noticed, I mean, my other role is chair of allotment, so I should declare that or not, but there are, I think, I only say this, I think there's potential, because I know a lot of allotmenters would like to set up little businesses, small holdings, that sort of thing. Have you actually identified that? No, I think if you actually were a lot of people go on land share, and there's a lot of people out there who probably like to do things like chickens, flower business, that sort of thing. I've just wondered whether you ever looked at that.
I'll just answer that one. Our department, or our team, no, we haven't. But I know that it was something that was being looked at through the RDP, the Rural Development Programme. They were looking at the food side of things. Yeah, so they were looking to support those. I personally, or my team, haven't, but my impression was it was being covered from that angle. And I'm not passing the buck. I will say, no, I haven't done anything with them. But I was under the impression it was being handled from that project rather than what I look after.
Councillor Davis.
Yeah, you might have probably answered this now, but just look on the website. In Torfaen, we've got 14 premises with 2 under offer. I was just wondering what type of, whether it's like software firms or heading towards places like Blenavon. We've got the SRS Centre and the fibre links and everything. Are you seeing more software and electronic-based companies moving to the north of the borough instead of things like heavy industry? I just wondered, that's all because Blenavon, we've got the hub, haven't we, the SRS hub, all the latest fibre networks and everything. I just wondered whether it's improved types of software companies and electronic companies moving to the north of the borough.
I don't think that's a piece of work we've done. Anecdotally, I think software companies are probably still going to the Technium more than they go into Blenavon. And I think that's probably to do with getting onto the M4 and out to London and all of that, really. It does make life a lot easier. I don't have any evidence to suggest anymore. I don't know whether you can add to that, Dawson. Although, you know, there are companies up there. The SRS, as I said, is more of a local authority police sort of work, really, rather than attracting businesses to there. There are some IT companies up there, but very few. I think most of the IT companies probably are down in Cwmbran.
To come in again, Councillor Ashley.
One other thing that questions, the other thing is knowledge-based and art-based industries, because if you talk Howell Ponting down at Llantarnam Grange, I believe we've got one of the biggest concentrations of 2D artists in the whole of South Wales. And he'd love to have some space to do that stuff in, wouldn't he?
He certainly would. And I suppose we are looking within the Pontypool settlement area now to look at the creative businesses over here as well. So, you know, there may be opportunities in the future, but, you know, currently the premises we have are what we've got, really, I suppose.
Councillor Bevan, would you like to come in?
Thank you, Chair. My question really ties into, it's a supplementary raised by some of the other councillors here. With regards to your answer to that previous question, I think, could you explain further whether we are focusing on the right areas? Do we have the right mix? In the report, the Welsh Government identified 9 areas that we should be looking at, which is creative industries, information and communications technology, energy and environment, advanced materials and manufacturing, life sciences, financial and professional services, food and farming, construction and tourism. Now, it seems to me from what's within our report that our primary focus here is only towards 2 of those criteria, with the creative industries and the information and communications technology sector very much focusing on digital. And is the mix right that we've got here in Torfaen? Because what about all these other sectors? I mean, in your own answer, you stated that we're almost full to capacity in the non-clean kind of environment for workshop premises, where the manufacturing in the kind of, I'll call it the oily environment, for want of a better word. And that seemed to come out in terms of the businesses that were coming in as well. They didn't seem to be businesses that were specifically in the digital high-tech arena, where we've got security services coming in, where we've got, where Alan and the chair went, one of the businesses there was, well, I've seen something on the website recently published about a chap who'd set up his own manufacturing business and was doing quite well now as well, after having been made redundant from Rowcroft. So really, could you elaborate further on the diversity and the mix and why there is so much emphasis on just the ICT side of things, and whether you feel more could be done to address all the other areas that were identified by the Welsh Government, such as, food and farming, construction, tourism, energy and the environment, and advanced materials manufacturing. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, there is bits going on all of that. Obviously, the financial and professional services, Torfaen, we have a certain amount of that, but the enterprise zone for that, if you like, is Cardiff. So remember, this is a national policy. So, we're not going to compete with Cardiff and trying to get your financial services here. It's the same really with the advanced manufacturing, which is going to be sort of the zone for that really is Ebbw Vale. Having said that, our links to that is really good because we're literally across the sort of a road, if you like, from Blenavon over to Blaen y Gwent. But we do have a lot of companies that are in advanced manufacturing. We did a piece of clustering work through the South Wales Directors of Environment and Regeneration Group, and actually Torfaen come out quite big on advanced manufacturing, food and construction. So we do have those elements within Torfaen are quite hefty industries. And tourism is something also that, we try to excel on, particularly with the World Heritage Site, and looking to market ourselves as the 3 Welsh World Heritage Sites, to start to look a bit broader than just Torfaen. Life sciences, usually, again, they're linked with the universities, Swansea, Cardiff. We do have things in the Technion that would link to life sciences, but generally they're the universities that bring up those businesses because they are research and development type businesses. They are quite sophisticated in terms of humans and whatever they do, that type of research, the life sciences. Energy and environment, again, I don't think Torfaen particularly excel on that. We are doing a fair amount of work internally, but again, that's not my team dealing with that. That's within the communities. And I know that they've done a lot of work putting on solars and on our buildings and things like that to try and get the energy and environment in Torfaen going, and hopefully knock-on effect of that will be businesses within that. But that isn't something we don't say we're not going to help those type of companies. We certainly do, but they're not something that is big in Torfaen currently, although we do have a number of those businesses in Lontarnum, actually. We have actually got quite a good mix, and I think our offer is to help and assist all of them in any way we can, really. I don't think we particularly disclude any sector, really. It's just that those sectors, should they come here, if they needed assistance from Welsh Government, they're more likely to get Welsh Government funding because they're in those sectors.
Okay.
Supplementary, Chair, please. I'll keep it quick. Thank you for that answer. It obviously shows that you've looked at the various different sectors, and I understand that there's regions that have been set up, like the finance around Cardiff Bay and around RAF St Athan and stuff as well. But you highlighted a number of areas where we are actually doing quite well in Torfaen, and I'm wondering, could we capitalise more on publicising that and attracting more investment in those specific sectors where we've already seemed to have got a reasonably good presence?
Agreed, and I think that is a piece of work that's being done under the South East Wales Economic and Regeneration Group. They've literally done a piece of work on cluster development. As I said, I've identified where our clusters are in Torfaen. And the next piece of work is what are we going to do to help generate those clusters to become bigger, and the nuclear of each of those are going to be the enterprise zones, because that's where businesses are going to get great deals to set up. But there will be a chain or a value effect from that. And as I said, Torfaen is linked quite closely to all of those, well, Cardiff and Ebervale in particular. And, I think this piece of work will develop. We will find out how we can encourage larger clusters. But I think that's a piece of work that'll come on in the next few months, really, through the City region and South East Wales work.
Thank you. Councillor Davis, could you take question 5, please?
Right. What research has been undertaken to expand the springboard for businesses that require larger premises once established?
What research has been done? Yes. Sorry, could you repeat that question?
Okay. What research has been undertaken to expand the springboard for businesses that require larger premises once established?
I'm not sure there's any piece of research done in terms of when they expand. What we do know is when they get to a point where they need new premises, they obviously talk with us. And indeed, we've been quite successful in getting some of the businesses into Llantarnam into bigger premises. So it's more of a discussion and a growing out of that building, and we don't just sort of say tra. We try to keep them here, and if we can't keep them here, what we really try to do is keep them in the South Wales region, because ultimately what we've got to remember is most of our people here in Torfaen probably work in Newport, Blaen y Gwent. Jobs in the whole of this area is as important as keeping jobs in Torfaen, because you've got to see it as that, when the passport office was closed in Newport, that had a huge effect on people living in Torfaen, because that's where they went to work. So it's really about making sure, if we can't get them in Torfaen, that they stay in South East Wales. And I think, through this report, you can see that's what we tried to do. So if we can't keep them in Torfaen, we definitely keep them pretty close.
Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I think the question probably relates to the fact that anecdotally we've been told, well, we know that about 33% of businesses who, if you like, mature themselves out of Technion then move elsewhere. And we also know it's a gateway into Wales for a number of companies to go in there. But we were told that most of all it's because of, the size of premises and the type of premises available within Torfaen. And I think what we're trying to say really, is there room for a springboard into a new springboard? Right. I.e. you spring into larger premises and move from there to try and keep them, because, and again, it's anecdotal, and I've no real evidence other than that to say, they would like to have stayed but couldn't. Try and say, is there a way, and, maybe it's a capital spend that we can't afford, but whereby if we've got them, we're incubating them, well, it's always nice to keep the baby, isn't it, and keep people employed within Torfaen, because presumably these businesses are successful, which is why they're looking for bigger premises and moving on. I know it wouldn't be 100% of those that left, but it's, I'm not saying it's a massive rate to lose, but I think there's a massive gain to be had if we could actually provide what they need next. I think what we're trying to say is have we spoken to people who are there now to say, where do you see yourselves going and what do you need at a very early stage, so we can actually look to see if we can make that provision.
The answer to what you're saying is there's no specific research, but Geraint, who can't be here today, who manages the facility, has regular contact with all his clients in that centre, and when they're ready to move out or need to move out, Geraint talks to them and will know what kind of premises, etc., they're looking for. There was plans for Springboard 2, the other side of the land where the spoil has been put from the present Springboard. It was costed out at around about £4.5 million before. There was ERDF funding allocated towards it at one time. The biggest problem was we couldn't find the other 50%. In answer to the question, yes, I think a second Springboard would work. Yes, we would love another Springboard, but in these austere times, another Springboard is most probably not practical. But the answer to the question is, yeah, they would. there would be a basis for actually looking and pursuing that project if it was financially feasible.
Any more to that question? Right, thank you. Perhaps I could ask Mr Williams to take number 6.
Thank you, Chair. Table 3 on page 40 of the report shows the percentage of self-employed people in Torfaen is lower than the Wales and UK average. Do you know why this may be? We're actually 5.5% of our population employed. It's gone up from 5. So that was in 2013. It's gone up.
Self-employment.
Yeah, it's gone up from 2012, which is 5%, I know, but it is way below the UK average and below the Welsh average.
There'll be hundreds of reasons why. You can look into that statistics. It's a national statistic, and there may be, God knows how many reasons for that. It is good news that it has gone up, because I think this area is renowned for staying in employment rather than going for self-employment. And I'm guessing that is potentially why we are lower than Wales as a whole and as Great Britain as a whole, whereas entrepreneurship and setting up businesses may be more of a normal thing to do, really. I think Wales in particular, and potentially the valleys, have always worked for large companies, and there is that mentality that, setting up as your own business is not a done thing, and it will go to work for somebody. But it has improved, and I think that maybe, and I think I said it in the report, that could be down to the recession, and sometimes necessity. People do sort of say, oh, well, if I can't have a job, I'll set up my own business. But, we wouldn't know the whole reason behind those statistics, really.
Chair, I do wonder if this is an area we should do some research on, because it is so starkly different. It's 3.4% beyond the Wales total. Great Britain total is 9.5, 4.5% more. Our economically active people is declining, number of employment is declining, and so on and so forth. You can see it from the tables on page 40. I just think there's a chance that we can fill a lot of this gap, but I'd like to know why that is so, because it is so starkly different. I just wonder whether we should, and as you said, Kath, there probably are a number of issues around that. I just wonder whether we should do some research to find out, to see what the opportunity really is.
Yeah, and I think it even starts from schools, where they're pushed, well, not pushed, but, they're asked to go to universities and all of that, rather than think of set up business as a career. We have tried to engage with schools to take up young enterprise, and that's really difficult, and it really starts from there as well as people thinking about, it really needs to start with some youngsters. So a piece of research on that, may help us understand what we can do to try and improve that. Absolutely, good suggestion.
Wilson would like to come in now.
Just to add into the stats that we're looking at there, when you're comparing us to Wales, Cardiff throws that stat a lot. When you compare it to Great Britain, the southeast of England throws that stat a lot. And one of the other things that is noticeable when you look at the figures underlying in Torfaen is particularly reliant upon public sector employment, right? And that will explain part of it as well. So there's 3 of the factors, but in all fairness, the extra research would be worth doing, and we'll get on to that.
Councillor Ashley and then Councillor Bevan.
Recent article in The Guardian about older people retiring early, or not retiring but maybe being made redundant, was a lot of them took up the self-employment route as a matter of choice, either hobbies or things that they were doing. Is that so here, and would that be pushing it up the small percentage?
If you look at some of the employment stats, our 16 to 24-year-old employment is falling, right, and our 50 to 65 is actually increasing. All right, so that will explain some of the bits and pieces. And yeah, there are older people starting to look at starting their own businesses as well. It goes back to that. Once you get over the 50 age group, you are less risk adverse. You have a bit more experience in life, so you're more capable of looking at starting a business. It's why people are starting to employ older people now. So there's all sorts of factors in it, but that is one of them, yeah.
Bevan, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask, given that the report highlights that, I'm trying to look for the exact wording here now, it says Torvine benefits from the highest level of assistance under the European Union's structural fund programmes, giving businesses access to a number of financial support schemes. And I was just wanted to ask the question, with that in mind, could we do more to encourage employers to take on and do more in the way of apprenticeships? Is there financial support available to companies that are willing to take on apprenticeships? If we're seeing more niche businesses coming in to the borough in manufacturing, wonder if we could do more to explore opportunities to get young people into apprenticeships as a mean to then getting them into employment within those particular sectors.
Two things really. I suppose the assistance that they would get from the business development side of things is of the highest level because of the deprivation within this area. And if they were given assistance, they usually have to, as part of that is a creation of jobs. Hopefully there is sometimes an apprenticeship, but may not always be. Obviously where we're coming from is creation of jobs rather than apprenticeships. In terms of funding for apprenticeships into work, I think that's probably more Torvine Training's remit, if you like, than mine. But I do know that they do have schemes where they can pay, I think, something like 50% of the salary of any apprentice that they take on. I don't know the value, maybe 50%, maybe less, but I know that they can offer companies, if they take on an apprenticeship, some funding towards that. But that's more what we call revenue funding that's done under Torvine Training, where we deal with the RDF, which is capital funding. So for ours, we would want job creation. Does that answer your question? So it is looked at, but not from my business development team, although we do work with Torvine Training, obviously.
Right, Dawson wants to come in on this.
If I could just add something to what Kath has said. When we do a local investment fund application, when we actually put the paperwork out for the companies to sign up for the grant scheme, we actually put all the paperwork, we actually make the introductions into bridges into work and all the adult education stuff, so that the job seekers. We've also done some stuff whereby we were tweeting CVs out at one time for once a month for a star employee kind of thing. So we have done a bit around those kind of things, and we do use our scheme to try and influence the employers to look at the kind of things that you've mentioned. But it is an influencing role rather than you have to do this, in all fairness.
Thank you. Councillor Evans, do you want to come in?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Going back to the stats that were mentioned earlier, and I take your point, Dawson, about Cardiff and Great Britain skewing those figures. I wonder, would it be useful going forward if we could have some correlation with authorities around us, i.e. Caerphilly and Newport, would give us a better understanding?
Certainly, we can do that. The statistics we provided today are done so because they're the ones that are collected via the corporate plan and the LSB. But we do have those statistics, and they can be easily got, really.
I think Dawson wants to come in again. No?
All I was going to say is it's a good suggestion and something that we can provide quite easily.
Right, thank you. Anybody else like to come in on this question? Right. If we finish, could Councillor Bevan take question 7, please?
Yes, Chair. Question 7. Do we have the right IT infrastructure to attract businesses to the area For example, is the broadband quick enough in the borough?
Superfast broadband is coming up the borough, and I'm pretty sure it's in Cwmbran currently. Pontypool is now, and I think they're going up to Blenavon within the next year or two. So we've got it. Whether businesses choose to buy into that is another thing, because whilst we say about superfast broadband is brilliant, a lot of businesses might say, I don't want to pay the extra for that. I'm quite happy with the broadband I have. This costs me so much, and it does the job I want. They don't necessarily need super broadband, if you like. But technically, Torfaen does and will be superfast broadband enabled, over the next 2 to 3 years. So there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to access it. It's a matter of whether we would want to at the cost it is currently. That may come down over the next few years, I suppose.
So essentially still, and what you're saying is there's still a disparity between the north and the south of the borough at this point in time in terms of the technology that's available to the businesses. That it's only as far as Cwmbran at the moment, but it's going to be 18 months, 2 years before Blenavon and the north of the borough benefit from the same technical capabilities as are currently available in the south.
Yes, I think it is already come to Pontypool. I'm not. Do you know the factual?
The reason it's been rolled out in the way that it's been done is that's the way BT has chosen to roll it out, and we had no influence over those business decisions at all. It's all done on population density and business density. They've chosen to do it that way. We're only pleased that they are rolling it out right across the borough, because there are parts of Wales where it won't go.
Councillor Evans and then Councillor Davies want to come in.
Thank you, Chair. I may be wrong here, and you can correct me if I am, but I thought some kind of system had been already started from Blenavon, from the Shade Resource Centre, going down the valley, and I'm surprised to hear you saying that's different.
No, I think the SRS is super broadband up to the hills. The technology there is as high as you're going to get, I suspect. What I think the question was is super fast broadband for me is the BT rollout. And that is coming up the valley from Cwmbran, from Cardiff, up to Cwmbran, Pontypool and Blenavon. And that's why I answered it that way. That's not to say Blenavon doesn't have that connectivity, because obviously SRS certainly does.
Briefly, Chair, so we can really say we are dependent on BT providing the super broadband in the future, not the borough, really.
It is BT, but the contract was given out from Welsh Government, so, it is something that Welsh Government is asking in partnership with BT to roll out. And I know that they've done lots of areas right across Wales, and I think Cwmbran and Pontypool are pretty much done, and I think it's on its way into Blenavon in the next year or so. And it really is just a contract with Welsh Government and BT.
And just finally, Chair, could we confirm that that is the case at this time? You say it could be possibly a year. Could we get more confirmation about the likely time that it's going to be installed?
I certainly can. I can share. We have a newsletter from BT on a regular basis updating us on that, so we could certainly share that with you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Davies.
I'm just going to say up in the north of Borough from Pontypool up, the average speed is between 11 and 13 gig, which isn't really, well, it's okay, but for a lot of people working from home and everything, it just isn't as fast enough. And for smaller businesses, I know the Corn Bin has just been given a high-speed link in Gandyffordd, which helps like IndyCube and different things. But for the average person wanting to work from home, it's just not acceptable, that speed. And perhaps I'm not sure whether we could put some pressure onto BT or the Welsh Assembly to try and roll it out quicker towards the north, because we're at a disadvantage to Cwmbran, Pontypool, so business at our end actually disadvantaged at the moment.
That's something we could look into. Right, thank you. Could I ask Councillor Ashley to take question 8, please?
There is an opportunity to promote the other services that are run by Torfaen to businesses, such as Bridges into Work, the 50+ scheme and Torvine training. Is there anything in place to link this information and share it with others?
As I already alluded, through the grant schemes, we already provide that information to every one of the businesses that has a grant. We work quite closely with those schemes. There is work being done to put a pack together with everybody's services in, so that when each of us are in different businesses, that we can hand them out and we can go through the different services. So there's a lot of work being done on that. We're very conscious that we're a shop front for a lot of things. So we are making inroads into that. And I must admit, I think the partnership working on that side is getting stronger.
Thank you for that. Councillor Evans, can I ask you to take question 9?
Certainly, Chair. We are aware of the work that takes place in groups such as Social Enterprise, Network, Torvine and the Business Voice, but do you monitor the membership of these groups?
Yes, the Social Network Torvine members have actually ceased. That doesn't any longer exist. And we do have the Business Voice Forum, which we hold monthly, and we do have all the statistics on the membership of that, and of course that's privately subscribed to through the businesses.
Can I ask a supplementary, Chair? What kind of information do you find useful and that you gather from these organisations?
Dawson may be better to answer this, but we do a networking session where they sort of introduce each other to each other, what businesses they have, what businesses they have to offer, and actually through that sort of networking, and it's like almost speed dating, we swap tables, we find out loads of facts about each businesses, what they're looking for, and can anybody help or work with them. So we find out quite a lot there, but generally it's really getting the businesses to understand some of the issues about health and safety. We might do workshops on different things that companies need to consider, which they might not necessarily know about any new legislation come in. So we would impart information onto those businesses, but in those networking initiatives, we get to know quite a bit about their needs, their wants, and of each other's businesses as well. So I think that's pretty much what we would do at the Business Voice, really.
When we're looking at Business Voice, we look at the numbers that are members, we have a look at the change in the numbers of members, we look at the kind of businesses involved. We ask those businesses exactly what they want out of Business Voice. What can we give them out of Business Voice? We ask them what they want in general as well and how we can help support them. Business Voice actually has a committee attached to it that is made up of business people from Torvine, and they are quite a big influencer on the way we deliver the Business Voice. So it's all about talking to the customers, the clients, or the members that we have and reacting to their needs. And that's why we tailor the meetings. Some of the meetings are just, as Kath said, networking. Some of them are presentations. Some of them are guest speakers. So we vary it as to what we're asked for. We've just done a big questionnaire with them as to what they want. So that's the way we use those relationship then, is to actually try and find out what they want and what's happening in the business world in Torvine.
Finally, Chair, can I just ask, you mentioned about the one organisation sent as disbanded then, more or less. Is there a reason for that? Or?
It was low attendance, really. I think it's social enterprises. They're usually one-man bands. They're pretty much busy on getting their business going, and the Scent wasn't very well attended in the end. And what we felt was better was that there was a number of them that could do better by coming to Business Voice now and coming into more networking with other businesses, and those that needed a bit more help was probably better supported through Incubation, Enterprise Facilitation, Mentoring Board. Scent, by the way, wasn't something that we were totally doing. That was with the communities team as well, because obviously that's where the Community Enterprise Initiative is.
Thank you, Kath. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Ashley wanted to come in.
In fact, that's where my question was coming, because I think you know my background in this. But I've seen a few social enterprises, and what information would be interested in it, what number of social enterprises we've got running at the moment. I presume some of them are crossovers from the charitable world as well, because and what number of those are charitable interest companies operating. And the other question I asked the other day when we were setting this up was what co-ops we had running, if any, because I don't know of any. But and it's a pity, because there's been a lot of work done on, a lot of money available, and maybe people aren't mindful of the fact that co-ops are something is available. Can you comment on that, if you would, please?
I'm afraid I can't. It's not my area. This would be the communities with Mark Doubler, really, that deals.
So we don't. Probably if I come back. So we don't. You don't touch that at all. That's a different department.
We have set up a few social enterprises, but that's purely because we happen to be out there with a business, or somebody who knew if somebody wanted to set a business, so we've supported them. The initiative, the Community Development Initiative, sits with the communities team, really. We do work with them, obviously, where we can help, we do, but that kind of knowledge would be with them rather than myself. You know, if you wanted to know more detail about how many there are, what types they are, if they're charities or whether they're co-ops, would be more with that team.
Thank you.
Mr Williams, you wanted to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, Torvine Business Voice provides a pretty valuable networking system. What I'd like to know is, do we know what percentage of the total number of Torvine businesses belong to Business Voice?
That's a good one.
The percentage is actually very low, if you want the honest answer. What tends to happen with Torvine Business Voice, we're very good at getting new members on it, and it tends to fill a need for businesses with regards to confidence building, and they tend to leave Torvine Business Voice and migrate towards organisations like the South Wales Chamber of Commerce. So it fills that niche whereby the new businesses become more confident and move on to other networking organisations. That's the way it is. We have been, as 130 members. We are at the moment around the 80 mark, and the membership tends to stay between those figures because new ones come in, old ones migrate, and it does fill that niche need of building confidence to be able to go onto other networks.
Right, thank you for that. We'll move on to the next question. I'll take that. Is the range of grants available from Torvine County Borough Council and Welsh Government sufficient to attract and retain businesses?
I think it probably is sufficient for manufacturing or services to manufacturing type businesses, but when it comes to retailing, obviously we're not going to support large retailers, your Sainsbury's and those, but we have what you call the independent retailing, and they are very important in terms of job creation as well. And unfortunately, they are very often the companies we can't support. We do go out and have a chat with them and see if there is anything we can do, you know, to give them advice, support and marketing or anything like that. But financially, there isn't a grant out there for them. And it really is a shame, because it could be, for example, a little retailing outlet that's in the town of Griffithstown or somewhere like that, which is really important service to the community. And they're asking for a small amount of money, it might be £500, £600 for a piece of capital, and we can't really help them. So that currently isn't available, but we are looking to see if we can fill that gap. Working with the credit union to see if we can do something to help those small businesses, and not just in the small towns, but in Pontypool and Blynavan, any small retailing company really, as long as they're independent.
That's really interesting, looking, you know, to credit union and places like that, because it is a small amount of money, and when the shops are empty, it makes the place look so down, doesn't it? And it's so important, really, to keep it looking vibrant. Councillor Bevan?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. With that last point in mind, that funding is just not available under the current structure to certain types of businesses, what sort of feedback have you had to the Welsh Government on that, to see if the range of funding can be increased or diversified to do these different types of businesses? Because it seems, obviously, with the government is supporting some businesses, but not other types of businesses. You know, and you mentioned one specific example of a retail example, where we've got such a high number of vacant shop premises. You know, if additional funding coming into a retailer would be an obvious solution towards filling some of those vacant shop premises.
Yeah, we have fed that back, you know. I think it is an area that's discussed quite often, really. But the funding comes from Europe, and that is how it is. You know, they will only fund manufacturing and services to manufacturing in the main. You can get it into, sometimes you can sort of push it to tourism businesses because it's really a service, you know, or if we can get business to business services, you can fund that type of activity. Retailing, they just won't look at. It's just something they're not up for, really. But in our area, having said that, Welsh Government, of course, do give out regeneration grants that have helped regenerate towns. So whilst we haven't had what we call like LIFT grants to be able to give to retailers themselves, we've certainly had millions of pounds come in terms of grants to help retailing centres, if you like. So it's not to say they're not helped. I think they are. But I just know of, as I said, it's more anecdotal than research, where we've gone out, met a couple of little businesses that really only need a small capital input that could make a huge difference in keeping our business going. And it's usually in the retail area, you know. And that's something that we can't do through those type of grants. So it's just something we're looking at, whether we could set up an interest-free loan that could be done over a long, long period through the credit union that just gives them that opportunity to keep trading and hopefully make a success of their business.
Councillor Morby, could you take the next question? You've just mentioned the LIFT grant, but this is a question on it. Yeah.
Basically, is the LIFT fund structured appropriately?
Again, you know, it's not something we can change willy-nilly. It is set. It's set throughout Wales, really, if you like. It has to go to those companies I've just sort of said, or at least business to business. So it isn't something we can change, really. So I think it is what it is. But it is successful, and I think companies, businesses, through that piece of research, has shown that they do value it.
Mr. Williams, you want to come in on that?
Yes, Kath. I mean, I think we understand it's not within your purview, if you like, to be able to change it. I think what we're trying to find out was, from your experience, if it was structured differently, do you think there's a way of actually leveraging more private investment? I mean, right now it's 40%. Same across Wales, it goes across them. But do you think, from your experience, that there's a better way of investing? I'm not talking about more money, but maybe using this money in a better way to leverage more private investment? Wide question, you might say no.
Yeah.
I think LIFT has served its purpose, and it's punched some good returns out on the money that has been used. There are some glaring issues with LIFT, one of which is a minimum of £1,000. That has affected the business startup performance indicators on that grant, because a lot of the small businesses, when they start up, don't generate enough spend to actually want £1,000 worth of grant, and we've found that, and that has been an issue. And that's why the business startup figures for LIFT are low. With regards to attracting more investment in, at one time we were able to go up to £35,000 on LIFT for different projects. That was removed part of the way through the scheme as well, because it's been a bit of a moving feast. and that did attract some larger percentages of private investment in, because it could fund bigger projects, and because it was aimed at building, it was above the 40%, the 60% leverage in, because we were funding, £200,000 worth of build with £35,000 worth of grant. So there are ways that could be changed to lever more money in. Whether that will happen, I don't know, because once again, it's European funding. But the most awkward part of it has been that £1,000 lower ceiling. And I think that is, there have been business startups in Torfaen, I know for a fact, that have missed out because of that lower ceiling. And that's why we're working on things like the credit union stuff to see what we can actually do to actually plug the gap. Hopefully, if we get a lift 2, as they're calling it, through the next round of European funding, then that £1,000 floor will be removed. But in answer to the questions is possibly we could lever more money in with different changes. I think we could, but I don't know if that will happen.
Right. Councillor Ashley, you want to come in on
Yeah, we haven't got a question as far as I can see on any other sources of funding, but the killer for small businesses is getting that initial source of funding, having been, as you well know, on the business development course myself. Even if you've got a good idea like a window cleaner or a valeting or any form of thing, getting that initial bit of money to set up and do your first few months worth of... what other forms of sources of funding are you recommending? Things like crowdsourcing or whatever, because there's not a lot of money available at banks these days, from what I understand.
If I can answer that, I mean, for the smaller scale stuff that you're alluding to, Councillor Ashley, right, then crowdfunding isn't the answer to that, because crowdfunding is looking at the larger things. Yeah. It's why we're going down this credit union route. It really is. And the reason we want to do that is that we want to get the small business interacting with a credit union at an early stage. So it's not just about borrowing the money, it's about getting into the habit of putting money to one side to cover your income tax bill, to cover various bits and pieces, because that's where a lot of small businesses fall down. Mr. Taxman comes along and says, well, you've taken £10,000 out of there, so I want £2,500, and it's not there. So those are the kind of issues that we're hoping to address through working with and I think that's got a lot of mileage, to be honest with you.
I've availed myself personally a credit union. Why don't you think people, sole traders and that, avail themselves of it, because it's such a wonderful source of money?
Possibly because they don't know. And what we're looking at, we're working with the credit union, is actually doing some joint branding and some joint marketing with them, because we do have the access to market to the business sector that perhaps they don't. So that's one of the ways we can help them and they can help us.
Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Chair. And going back to the lift funding, obviously there's some people are being hampered by this £1,000. Is there a mechanism in place that we can collaborate with other authorities who are obviously feeling the same pressures here, that we can get our message over to the European funding stream?
I think we pretty much are now, as Dawson said, going through Lift 2. That's very much the feedback. There's a piece of research that was attached to this report, the Old Bells 3 report, which highlights that, we're not very good at startups, and we're saying that some of that is down to the £1,000 grant, and that is feedback we're going back to Welsh Government and WEFO, and hopefully that will be in a consideration if there is going to be a Lift 2. And that, we could look for the smaller, that sort of niche, if you like, in terms of helping start-up businesses, in terms of funding. So we are trying to do that, basically, now at the moment.
Now we're doing it in collaboration with other authorities?
Oh, yeah. But when we do anything with LIF, it's for the whole, with that it's for the 5 authorities, the valleys, if you like, with RCT, Merthyr and such like.
Thank you, Kath. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Would Councillor Seaborn take question 12, please?
Thank you, Chair. Are there instances where businesses have used the Springboard as a base for receiving grants, but have not made use of the space provided? Are there any checks in place to stop this from happening?
I'm unaware of that. I don't know whether Dawson could add to it. Unfortunately, Geraint's not here today. He'd have been able to answer that. But I don't think that's happened. But I don't know whether you can add to that.
The answer to that is, at one time, there were people who registered their address at Springboard in an attempt to pull that kind of funding down. It was stopped. Right? And to my knowledge, it hasn't happened again. And that's how I can answer that. It was something that at one time we ran a registered address programme, and it was stopped.
Thank you. Anybody else got a question on that? No. Go on to question 13. Can I ask Councillor Davis to take it?
Thanks, Chair. Is any monitoring carried out to ascertain how many new jobs created by businesses in the Springboard are filled by local residents?
I don't think so. I suspect they are local residents, although there'll be some that won't be. But I don't think we do keep those statistics, so it'd be worth perhaps having a look at.
Councillor Evans, you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Just on the statement that you made, Kath, really, it would be useful to have that information to see if there were local jobs provided.
I don't know whether there'll be any problem with that, because obviously these are employees of companies. They're not obliged to tell us everything, but we could certainly have a look to see if we can see whether they're prepared to say, do you live in Torfaen or not, you know, but they're not obliged to tell us that type of information.
Thank you. Alan Williams, will you take question 14, please?
Thank you, Chair. In the statistics that provided in the report, we come out very well in terms of the amount spent per job within LIF. But it also showed in there that Bridgend are creating a larger number of jobs than most local authorities in Wales. And for instance, the number of grants claimed in Bridgend was 169, and it produced 271.9 jobs, against 168 grants in Torfaen that produced 173.7 jobs. Simple question, really. What are they doing differently?
The simple answer is they're dealing with different kinds of businesses to the ones we're dealing with. 90% of the economy in Wales is built upon less than 10 employees, right? And Torfaen mirrors that. But where Bridgend is fortunate, there are a number of large employers based around Bridgend, basically because of its access to the M4 and its nearness to Cardiff. So they do deal with different kinds of businesses to us. It sounds very simple, but that is it, really.
Fine, there's a simple answer. Thank you, Dawson. That's what I think the point was, I mean, we're asking, had we found out what it was, and you obviously have.
Right, thank you. Last question, I'll take that. How are we doing compared to our nearest neighbours in relation to encouraging entrepreneurship in the borough?
Indeed. In terms of looking at the other councils that we work with, in terms of entrepreneurship, I think Torfaen shows that we actually had quite a high number of social enterprises and small companies. So I think we do okay. But do we do an absolute analysis of that? And no, we probably don't. And I guess how would we determine entrepreneurship? That would be quite a difficult one to do, I suspect. I don't know if you want to answer that, Dawes.
It's the definition you're going to give to entrepreneurship. If you're going to give it a definition of someone who starts a business, then there is quite an easy comparison to make. I just jump on the Stats Wales website and it's all there in black and white for me. If you're looking at people thinking of starting a business, which could be come under the entrepreneurship label, then that's much more difficult to actually define. It's much more difficult to actually put a number on it, is what I'm looking at. So the answer is, no, we don't. We don't make a comparison to our near neighbours. If I'm honest, I tend to worry about my part of the world and making my part of the world work. And that's the honest answer on it.
Thank you. I think Councillor Ashley wants to come in.
Yeah, bouncing on from the entrepreneurship, there was one question that sort of missed a bit here, which was how do we encourage young people to become entrepreneurs? That was missed out, wasn't it?
Well, it was covered in the first part of the question.
But I wonder about that one, because encouraging people to become entrepreneurs is important when they're obviously young.
We do try to do young enterprise, which is a really, really great initiative, and I would really urge the schools to take it up slightly more than they do. We do send out a letter and try to engage with them quite often. We do also work with Newport University, and we're doing a lot of work with them in terms of startups there. So we do it's a similar to Dragon's Den type event, but again, you know, it does spur on some startups and entrepreneurship. So we do try and do quite a bit of that. But and of course our enterprise facilitator is all about entrepreneurship, is trying to get people to set up business, if that is how we're defining entrepreneurship.
Have you had any success stories? That's the question.
The enterprise facilitator has started, but I go back to the young enterprise story because possibly that's where scrutiny could be a big help to us. The winner of the team, there's two awards. There's a company award and a team award, and the winner of the team award for the last 2 years has been Crownbridge, right? And they've produced some absolutely fantastic work. Yet they're the only Torvine school that's entering at the moment, right? None of the other Torvine schools enter. We had a fantastic area finals in Big Pit, and the reason we picked Big Pit for the venue was because you had entrepreneurship of the old style, entrepreneurship of the new style, and to bring the two together. It was a fabulous event, but the Torvine schools, for whatever reason, and I can assure you, I try very hard, because I sit on the Young Enterprise Board, do not participate in Young Enterprise. And they really are missing out. And that's where perhaps that scheme could do with a boost from people like yourselves, to be honest.
That's really sad to hear, and I think we'll have to do something about that, you know, to encourage them, because that's obviously missing from Torvine. I think Alan Williams wants to come in, and then Councillor Evans.
Thanks, Chair. One major question I've got, it was stated as part of our visit and in speaking to a couple of other people as well, that they get great support from people within Torvine, but they don't feel it's joined up enough across all the various aspects of them running their business. And considering most of them, as I said before, I think 12 members are mostly head down, backside up in driving their business on. They miss out on a number of these different issues that could help them to support and find their way through lots of issues, not just looking for funding, but how they can access other companies to trade with, how they can actually tender properly when they don't have the resources to do it. Do you think there's a case for looking to see whether or not we could provide something that was more joined up, or a one-stop approach for businesses? Or are we too diverse to be able to do it? I mean, it's just a question I'd like to throw out.
No, I mean, I think we try to do that. You know, I suppose you just can't capture everything, but I think what we try to do, I think the business team pretty much know exactly what's out there, what's available. This is a two-way communication. If businesses aren't talking to us and saying there is an issue or we need some help doing this, then of course we can't steer them in that direction. So it's incumbent on them to come to us if they're having issues, or if they would like some help with something, or there's something happening in their business that they're not quite sure about. Because I'm pretty sure if they did ask either Geraint or Dawson or the business owner, we could probably direct them and get them in contact with somebody that can help. I suspect with the businesses in Technium, when we do put them in contact with Welsh Government, remember they will drill down about every detail, because the businesses in Technium are knowledge-based, they're usually very new and therefore high risk, so they will ask lots and lots of questions in order to help them, because obviously if public funding is going into those businesses, we need to make sure it's on a fairly good basis, really. So we'll try and have a look at that and see if we can put it, I don't know, maybe we need to tell businesses that, you know, you need to use us more as a one-stop shop, and that might be a message that we can get over a bit more succinctly, because we'd like to think that is something we do actually offer.
To be honest with you, to go on at the back of what Kath has just said as well, it sometimes depends upon the experience they have when we actually pull the support package together. It's very difficult at times. There are people within a big organisation like Welsh Government that have mixed experience, mixed ways of dealing with business, and sometimes if you put, you can introduce you into the right programme, and sometimes it's the wrong person, and that's very, very difficult to control. We do run an account managed service. We are targeted to do 100 a year via Ffynnon, which we achieve. But when you're looking at these kind of things, it all depends their experience the other side of the fence. And to be honest with you, what we do is find the gates in the fence, because there is a fence there. And that's why some of the companies get frustrated, and that's, I think, maybe what you're picking up.
Councillor Evans, now then Councillor Ash.
Thank you, Chair. Going back to the young entrepreneurs that we discussed earlier, and you made mention of working with Bristol University, did you say? Or Newport and Swansea. Newport and Swansea. Are we working with our local colleges as well?
We do try, and we're actually dealing with colleges and schools, and we've done pop-up retail initiatives with them in our town. So we do try to do it. We've even worked with primary schools. So there are some, it is difficult because they do, you know, they're concentrating on a curriculum, which I understand. So it's not easy to get into the schools to see how setting up businesses and working for themselves is quite a difficult thing to do. But we have on occasion worked with both colleges and schools in terms of trying to get them to look at business development.
Thank you, Chair.
I want to make a very short, obvious point. I did ask you questions earlier about co-ops, social enterprises, and obviously the businesses. It seems to me that if you obviously sit in different departments, you ought to be running them together, because the experience gained in one can be useful in the other.
Fair comment.
You're running your life in a charity or a church. It's a useful experience of running your own business.
It's a fair comment, but if you, there are moves across it. The enterprise facilitation, communities first actually sit on the board. So we're making big efforts to work right across. We go, as I said, you look at the bridges into work and the adult education stuff, we work across that. So it is happening.
Right, thank you. That's the end of the questions. Can members think of anything else they'd like to ask Kath or Dawson whilst we're here? Right. Kath, Dawson, is there anything you would like to tell us that we haven't touched on or you think that would be important?
Not for me. I think that was quite thorough, really. I think we covered most areas.
I just wanted to say, Chair, considering the small amount of staff that's involved in this huge piece of work, I think they've been commended, really.
Yes, so do I, yes, yeah. Well, it leaves me... Oh, did you want to come in, Dawson?
Just the support that I asked for young enterprise would be really, really appreciated.
Right, I'll thank you, the three of you, for coming and being so patient and answering the questions so fully. And I know it's taken time, but thank you very much for your time and your patience with answering the question. We do appreciate it. Thank the three of you. Thank you. Right, we'll go into our recommendations now for the executive member. Just bear in mind the key question to be answered was, what is the impact of the Torfaen Economic Enterprise Initiative, and is there a return on investment for the local economy from the investment into new companies? So what are your wishes?
Sorry, Chair, is it really possible to answer that first question, given it's only a year old, and most information we've got relates up to 13?
Yeah.
I mean, you feel as if they're on the right track and everything's, you know, they are doing a great deal of work with very little resource.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can answer that first question.
Yeah, just to come in there, when the pro forma was put together, it was obviously before we received the report, so the key question was put together, and then we were fed back that the initiative was in its infancy. So I think realistically is the second part of the question that you need to answer.
Yeah. Question 5. What research has been undertaken to expand the springboard for businesses that require larger premises once established? Yes, we can... okay.
I feel, Chair, that another area we need to look into is supporting a possible second springboard, which could, you know, I mean, that's a facility we need. I know it's austere times, as has been pointed out, but if we are left without any movement, they go out the borough.
Yeah, we have to have the premises and the encouragement to get them there. Yeah.
Could I ask the question I was asking about suitable premises for suitable start-up businesses? That something that did concern me, and I asked questions around that. The small, especially the small stuff, and that's not just Springboard. It's you know, it's the very small stuff, and he did answer that. But again, it's got the same caveat: providing suitable funding. The other thing I would like to add was the one I just said at the end there, which was stop working in silos and actually join up where possible, because there's obviously a couple of 3 departments there, and you've got social enterprises and co-ops. You've got that department. They should all work together, and they obviously do it to a large extent. And it makes obvious sense for them to work together. Yes, yeah. There's not many of them in any of those departments.
Yeah, the credit union possibility, you know, that's really good, you know, for small businesses. Yes, yeah, question 10, yeah. And question 12, what was that? For instance, with business have used the Springboard base for receiving grants, but have not made use of the space. Are there any checks in place to stop this from happening? Well, he said it had stopped. So, you know, I don't think we can comment on that. Marketing, I think they need, obviously, more funding to do that, but I think marketing is a huge thing, you know, to go forward with this. If they had the resources to market further afield, you know, get known over the bridge and places like that, if they want to start up businesses in Wales, or, you know, I think marketing is...
Yeah, that came up to me, Chair, as a real restriction, really, all about budget. And really, I'm not saying it's their fault, but, you know, we should be, how can I say, going to the Assembly, you know, to ask for help with this. If it's a hindrance in Torfaen, it's a hindrance in other counties and boroughs. So I think we need more support. It is a missed opportunity, isn't it? Yes.
We have a whole council buy-in from this, because that struck me immediately, that we've got the civic structure, we've got community councils, the whole community can buy into this. It's too important just to leave it there. Marketing should be exercised that all members should be. I don't know. Have we got a business champion or member met as a member?
Not that I know of.
I don't think we have we?
Yeah. Alan. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
I don't think we're a champion.
To me, it wasn't a question of what we had to market. I think there were a lot of tools out there, a lot of information already produced. I think it's how we more effectively use it. is the point, because they do have some great material that they've developed. It's how we actually push and get that out and be proactive with it. I think that was the key to me.
Yes, just echoing on to what Alan said about perhaps training. I was surprised that they hadn't heard of #FF, where they could have promoted their business and got other businesses to keep promoting it to their circles. And I'm hoping that perhaps Torvain will take it on board with their Twitter feed, and perhaps on a Friday give them a shout now and again and get the ball rolling to try and encourage more people to friend them and actually look at the good work they're doing.
The one-stop shop approach and the schools, and those are very important. Anything else?
And the other one, and Dawson asked for our support with it, really, is try to encourage the young entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
What way do we go with that? Do we go to learning scrutiny, or do we?
Well, we can do it as a recommendation, and then the recommendation goes further, to where it needs to go. That's what I would say now. We can put it in to ask education, to look at it.
Well, I think we ought to listen to what they said, which was that the schools aren't happy with the way it's currently structured, and we should be asking the executive member to inquire within his department why the schools are unhappy, by and large, to enter the Young Enterprise Scheme, and ask for those answers to be supplied to us in due course. There may be very good reasons why the schools say, it's not for us. What else are they doing instead? I know from my lad's own school that they are involved in things which I see as young enterprise. Maybe not this Young Enterprise Scheme, but they're doing other things. So that may be the answer. So rather than say, they ought to join it, we ought to be saying why aren't they joining it, and what can be done, and what are they doing anyway to encourage young enterprise within their schools.
Right, thank you for that. Yeah, who was first? Alan first.
Thank you, Chair. I think what Brian's just said is really symptomatic of a few things across here in terms of not being joined up enough.
Certainly.
When you say for a few years it's only been Crown Bridge, for instance, they haven't then gone and found out why is that, and there could be a host of reasons for that. If you look across, I think they used the phrase, I think Dawson used the phrase, that was it, we're providing gates. Well, if I ask the directions, they'll give me the gate to go through it. I mean that isn't being proactive, is the way the Sunday control. And it just appears to a number of these issues, it isn't joined up enough to actually make it work properly and cohere. And I think that's something that they strongly need to look at. I mean, these services obviously can't all come into one umbrella, I don't think, because they're quite wide, but surely we look at a better way of facilitating this. So the issue that Brian's just outlined, for instance, should not happen. It should just be part of the process.
Can I as a board member of CCYP, we've actually got a project going in the football factory, which is actually a young person's enterprise project, which they didn't mention. And so there are projects out there for young people doing this, and that maybe ought to be included in that as well. Have you got that included there? There are examples, and then maybe the youth service ought to be included in it as well. It's not just the schools. I just want to make an example there.
Could I make the point, because we were talking about working in silos or whatever, it seemed to me that what we've got is a very small number of officers working on this particular issue. They have difficulty seeing the overall strategic position because of the way in which things are organised. Now, it's not our job to suggest that they need to be reorganised in some way, in some particular way, but I think we ought to be saying that there seems to us to be a problem because it is a small number of people involved in this particular topic. The opportunities for taking a strategic overview seem to be limited, and that could be dealt with in one of two ways, or both. One would be to look at other authorities and see if we can engage with other local authorities to improve jointly job creation opportunities within our areas. And secondly, whether to look horizontally within the council at the co-op's work and the other things which are being done in other sections within Torfaen. So I think anyway, they would be better as part of a bigger group which had a more strategic overview either of a wider area or of more than simply their relatively limited but important role. But that means some sort of consideration of restructuring and at least perhaps they could start looking at that.
Thank you for that. Yes, Councillor Bevan.
Hello. All right. Yeah, thank you, Chair. I made a list of comments. Quite a few of these have been already picked up by other members of the committee as well. One thing that I wanted to touch upon that hasn't necessarily been hit upon so much by the other members is I had concerns over the focus and the scope of the initiative within Torfaen. I felt it was too narrow. We're focusing solely on the ICT and high-end digital, and really I don't see that that's going to give Torfaen specific advantages over any other borough. Any other borough that's going to have the infrastructure in place with the high-speed broadband, what have you, we're going to be at best on a level playing field. I think that we should look at some of the other success stories that we've had that are coming into Torfaen. Microbreweries, niche manufacturing. It shows that because we've got these types of businesses coming into Torfaen, the fact that we're as far as we are from the M4 is not an issue in terms of the distribution networks for these type of businesses. They don't feel that they're too far isolated from the M4. They're coming into Torfaen. So certain factors must be appealing for them to come into Torfaen. Now, whether that is because we've got lower rent premises or whatever, I don't know. But I think a lot more can be done to focus on these other areas. There is a compartmentalised, sort of almost silo mentality that Brian picked up, Councillor Morby picked up on as well, because the fact is a small team. And what more can they do to collaborate and cooperate within other departments within Torfaen? I think that was an issue as well. The thing about, the apprenticeships, that's really comes under a different area. Well, there should be conjoined approach, really, because all of that is working towards increasing the number of jobs within the borough. The answer to the question, are we providing the right type of premises to attract business to Torfaen, is not necessarily. They're working with what they've got on their books at the moment. In some cases, it is adequate, where they've got new things like the Springboard, the new business startup, where they're providing, a microcosm of office space. But perhaps the point there is, where we've got closures of schools, for example, the site, something like that, would be, in my mind, a candidate for having a Springboard too. Could a site be an old school where it's being closed and demolished, rather than being sold off to a private contractor? Could Torfaen possibly look at the opportunities of that for developing Springboard too?
There is land next to the existing Springboard, and originally there was to be another building alongside it, but the Assembly didn't feel fit at the time to give the grant. So there is land out next door to the existing Springboard building. So I don't think that's a problem, the land itself. I think it's just the money to build it. You know what I mean? Yeah.
It was on, it went off, sorry. That's specifically for Springboard, and I wasn't aware of that. But, there was a general point as well in terms of the availability of the premises. We've got to attract more businesses into Torfaen. They did say that the Welsh Government funding was there. It was agreed in principle, 50% of it, but the funding wasn't forthcoming from Torfaen to be able to match it. So I'll just go through the few other things as well.
Sorry to interrupt, but wouldn't it be a good idea to be asking planning to let us know what sites are available for development, without having to worry about schools closing. There are lots of areas within Torfaen where I know there are failed businesses or businesses which have moved on. And, well, I was thinking of the southeast corridor, I think it's called, where there's plenty of room for some small businesses if we had money to build the right sort of premises in which to accommodate them. So let's refer that to planning. I think this is the whole question. You know, Kath said we have what we have. The question we ought to be asking, well, okay, we have what we have, but what do we actually need prospectively, and what land do we have available to enable those needs to be met? Something along those lines.
Thank you for that.
Sorry.
Yeah, good idea.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Morby, and thank you, Chair. Really what I was doing was going through a list of my comments and observations, really, some of which are probably recommendations, and some of it is food for thought for the committee. So thank you, Brian, for that. Rephrasing it in effect for my comment and observation into a recommendation that can be put forward by the committee. Hopefully the rest of the committee can do the same on some of the observations and say whether they agree with them or not, and then we can hopefully formulate them into a recommendation as Brian's just done. Okay, so yeah, what was a concern to me as well was, although we seem to be the highest in terms of getting EU funding, grant funding wasn't available to all types of businesses, and I wondered what the committee felt, whether we could make a recommendation around that. Some of it seems to be that there are constraints on the funding that comes from the Welsh Government or from the EU for specific types of businesses. Now, I know that they mentioned that they were working with Credit Union to try and get around that. Second thing was they were awaiting LIF2. I wondered whether we could make a recommendation that Torfaen makes some sort of representation regarding the framework around LIF2 in terms of what we would like to see, was particularly mentioned to the ceiling of this limit of £1,000 and whether that could be addressed. I don't know whether there's any consultation that's ongoing with LIF2, but perhaps we could see whether we could make some sort of recommendation or request for some sort of flexibility within the new LIF2 framework that was to be coming out. I did feel that there had to be closer cooperation between the departments regarding apprenticeships. One thing that came out of your visit and Alan's visit to the Springboard was a comment that they made that there was not sufficient clarity over the funding that is available to the companies, and there was a lot of requests for assistance in terms of how they applied for it. So whether we could make a recommendation that there's more publicity made available to companies to let them know what types of funding are available. And finally, I think we've got one or two points on the back. It was apparent that Torfaen schools were not doing enough to encourage young entrepreneurs. And perhaps we could make a recommendation that more is done to approach schools and colleges about business startup opportunities and make them aware of funding and incentives. Concerns over availability of suitable premises, I've already mentioned that. Oh, and the other thing was the migration of businesses away from Torfaen Business Voice to larger organisations within South Wales. I wondered whether perhaps more could be done to retain them, i.e. what are they offering that Torfaen Business Voice is not offering, so why do they feel the need to use it as a stepping stone onto something else? So, thank you, Chair. That was all my comments.
Thank you. I think you asked that, Alan, didn't you? Yeah. But the last point that was made then, yeah, we had an answer to that. Right. Anybody else want to add to that? I think we had, some of that already listed. Right. Do you want to go through it now, Kath?
Okay.
Where we go?
Right, bear with me now because these are just written as we've gone along.
Yeah.
Some of them I think will end up forming comments, whereas others will become recommendations. Some of these I think can also be linked together, so it sounds a lot reading them out, but I think once they start to become looked at, they can be one. So we've looked at expansion of the Springboard and how we would support it. However, Dawson said on the day and today that even though there's land available and perhaps the need is there, the finances are not, and I don't really know if there's anything we can do to influence that, but we can say that we support it and feel that there is a need. Then there's a point about joined up working of service areas, and there's lots of little things that I can add into that. Support the work that's being done with the credit union to look at supporting what they call the independent retailers.
Could you actually explain what the credit union scheme is, because not everybody knows that?
I don't know if I know that.
Look it up.
I can look it up and provide something. But
it's on the credit union website, if you look.
More to be done to market the Springboards, look into more proactive and cost-effective ways of promoting their services, not only to businesses and people who are interested in a business, but to members as well. Then we had the issue about the schools. So what we were saying is finding out why schools are unhappy with the scheme. What are they doing instead? And is there anything we can do to help them so that they would be inclined to use the young enterprise schemes that are out there? Use of more social media feeds, which I'll put up with the marketing one. Work with other local authorities as a bigger group to look at promoting. Look at other success stories on the work and then grow on it. So the other sectors, other than the IT and digital schemes, so that was the points that you raised about the other schemes that we've got. And then there was the bit about considering looking at other buildings and then should we get planning involved, and that will fit into the fact that we agree that Springboard, that there is a need to expand it. And then, is there any consultation available in relation to Lift 2, which would allow local authorities to provide their recommendations to how they think it could benefit or be improved?
There was,
I got the CYPP run schemes at the Football Factory, and to link into what they've got. Rundums.
Sorry, Chair, one thing.
I've also, one-stop shops, I've missed that. We've got that as well, about them going in and being able to help.
Yeah, I think the point that I'd like in there, Chair, is whether we can examine what we can do in relation to access for businesses to one another.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a low percentage using Dawson's term, using Business Voice. There are other small issues from there. There are lots of business out there, and this was said by some of the people at the Technical, who don't know where else is there for them to go and get access to, where they can actually trade between businesses. And I think the term we used was a gold mine. That said there's a gold mine out there that we can all tap into one another for one another's benefit. And of course, that trade is all done within Torvine. So it's how we actually approve access to one another across the Torvine business community.
One of community enterprises and social and co-ops, which is something that also needs to be brought in as well, because that is a slightly different area, but it's still businesses.
Can mention it, but it is a different area actually. Yeah. Okay. I don't know whether we can put it in, but we can mention it. But work could be
the point
joined
generally
up.
about silos and the possible strategic taking a strategic look at job creation in a wider context than we've had today.
Yeah.
So what we shouldn't do is anticipate the conclusion from that relook. We're asking people to review. We shouldn't be saying they should do this, they should do that. That's not our role.
Right.
Okay, so
got it all there.
Sorry, Chair. Have we captured the Business Voice part of it that you brought up, and Alan, actually, why people are going up from Business Voice out to a wider remit, really? Got that down. Thank you, Chair.
Can I just mention business directory. It just seemed to me that's an answer which may be too simplistic, but is there a Torfaen business directory? And what part do we play in that, in developing that, if any, and ensuring that businesses across Torfaen have access to it?
There is actually a business directory in existence that sits on the Torfaen Enterprise and Economy website. But I'd like to stay with Brian's point, because it is just, if you like, a telephone directory. It's got the names and where they are. It doesn't do any more than that. And again, it's a reactive kind of thing. You go and have a look at somebody, you've got to troll through it. I mean, I think there are quite a number of businesses on there. There's a massive number of businesses in Torfaen that are not on there as well. So I still agree with Brian's point, but there is a directory on the website.
Very valuable tool.
To me, the problem isn't just having a directory, it's how you actually get these businesses to work together. So I said, when you got 1, 2, 3 and 10-man bands, you know, they're working at their business. They operate within their silos of their business, you know, because the time it takes within their business as well. You know, they come out, and I've got a bit of time for my family with lots of these types of people. So it's how we can actually get those to engage with one another and open up the opportunity, rather than saying, by the way, here's a list of businesses. They could go and pick up the Torfaen directory and do that, couldn't they? Telephone directory.
So what we are saying, it can be developed, a scope for development. Right, I think we've got all that done now. We'll move on to the next item. Get them in? Right. Item 8 is a transportation review. So I hope that's quicker than the one we've just done.
Can I just say as well that I think that last 2.5 hours demonstrated we had too many questions. We should have had fewer questions and more. Some of them were repetitive. I think we could do better. That's partly because there was only a couple of us at the last session on Monday.
Right, we move on to item agenda 8, scoping report for the transport review. And I'd like to welcome Duncan Smith and Joe Lewis. And I'd like to apologise too for keeping you waiting so long. The item before did go on rather a long time, and I do apologise for that. The key question to this was, what areas should be covered in the review, and are there any alternative models that can be considered? Joe, are you going to do a short, just a short presentation, and then we'll go into the questions? Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'll just do a quick run through a few of the key points for you. Transport's been identified as an area to consider for review. It's been noted through benchmarking and information sharing that transport in general across all local authorities is an area which has been reviewed, and successfully efficiencies have been brought in and utilised. Our Senior Managers Forum was brought together in October 2013, and it was meeting with the remit of coming up with ideas to look at the future of the budgets and how we can create savings and do things differently. Transportation was one of those options put forward, and in February-March 2014 it was agreed that that project would be taken forward. So since that time, it was agreed to review the current approach, what we are currently doing, who's doing it, and how much does it cost, so that we can get a baseline of the resource and budgetary implications to the authority for providing transport. The benefits of reviewing it and changing it and the potential outcomes are listed in the report. The approach that was taken was to compare to other local authorities and their costs, although they're not directly comparable to our own because of the size and scale of the different complexities of the county boroughs. The leadership team were informed of the findings and the progress to date in July and generally agreed that the approach to continue to gather more information for our baseline in terms of financial, in terms of our contracts, in terms of the staff resource that we use. And that work is currently being done now, gathering more information across the whole of Torfaen and including the Joint Passenger Transport Unit that we work with for concessionary fares. What we'd like the committee to look at is to look at what the report says about the potential findings and potential benefits and agree that these are what we should be looking at. If there's any comments on that. The review will look at achieving all of the things that are listed in the report. Is there anything else that the committee would want to add to that? We're not preempting the outcome, and we're looking at all routes, and we're not going to close off any avenues. So at this stage, all options are open to the council. The case study that's detailed in the report was looking particularly at Newport. They had a diagnostic review, which they paid a consultancy for, and they then entered into a risk-reward agreement with that consultancy, and that netted them just over £3 million worth of savings in 3 years. They brought their budget down from £11 million to £8 million, and they did that through a number of things, predominantly through renegotiating their contracts for special educational needs, primary and secondary schools, through their fleet, through hire of fleet, and through maintenance contracts, repairing their fleet, through car allowances and through transportation of clients in social services. They operated something called a single passenger transport framework, which allowed all of the needs across the council to be considered in the contracts that were let to the providers. Torfaen was starting from a more advantageous point than Newport. We've already reduced our baseline budget £1 million between 13-14 and 14-15. That's due to efficiencies in how we looking after our fleet. And we're going to further refine that for the 15-16 baseline and ensure that we've accounted for all the staff that are involved and all the other key factors that need to be put into the review. What we would be looking at doing in Torfaen, rather than bringing in a consultant to do a diagnostic review and to actually carry out the review for us, we'll use our in-house expertise, and we will then draw in specific expertise as we need it. For example, if we were looking at procurement, we could bring in a specific procurement expertise if it was required outside of the council's resource to do so. And that will then obviously make it a more efficient review, and it will mean that as Torfaen we will benefit from the savings that we are identifying and able to carry out.
Thank you, Jo, for that. Shall we start the questioning, members? I said it once, haven't I? The areas that should be covered in the review. What are we looking at? Okay, then. Councillor Morby, do you want to start the questioning?
Yes. I've got it. I found it now. Don't worry. I'm going to rephrase this because I think we've got a misunderstanding about the concessionary fare scheme. It looked from a sentence that we read in the report that the concessionary fare scheme was outside the scope of the review. And I think actually what the position is that the £395,000, which is likely to be spent next year on our contribution to the concessionary fare scheme, is in effect outside the scope of the review in the sense that we can't do anything about that as things stand. But of course what we felt was that the impact of the concessionary fare scheme on the transport being provided for, in this case, children going to school, up and down Torfaen, was actually something which ought to be taken into consideration when looking at transport requirements across Torfaen. And I think, and I'm hoping you're saying that that traffic, if you like, is part of the review, that you will be looking at that and at the opportunities that those bus services and taxis or whatever they are actually do are considered when we're trying to, or you're trying to come up with ways in which we can be more efficient and taking account of the whole picture as far as traffic is concerned.
Yes, that's absolutely right. Yes. The reason that the concessionary fares element is outside of the scope is only because if you go back a number of years, I think we'll go back to about 2002, 2003, the council used to fund a half fare, and Welsh Government took a policy change to make it a full fare concession. And what happened was the councils were still expected to provide that base budget contribution that they always had, ring-fenced, towards the grant then that Welsh Government topped up. So we get from Welsh Government about £3.3 million in grant, but £395,000 the council has to pay towards that provision. In saying that, as you say, the efficiencies come through looking at if we've got a subsidised route that the council funds or that is towards concessionary fares, we've got that route going through the borough and that is on a school route. Then if we had a unit that was looking at procuring a transport contract across hitting all of those needs, instead of having a school bus doing a direct school route and having an actual contract service bus doing a similar route, you can align those times and just hit those two things in one go. So, exactly, and that's exactly what I mean. Michelle, if she were here, would be able to tell you a lot more about it because that's her specific expertise. But that is the potential efficiency in contract letting, is to cover those things off. And of course there'll always be specific needs for specific children, particularly a looked after child who has to have for a need under their care order, for example, a taxi. But then that would be an individual case as opposed to a general case where you'd be able to utilise potentially social care transport as well as school as well as concessionary fares in the one contract on the one route.
Thank you. Councillor Seaborn, will you take the second question?
Thank you, Chair. Can you give an indication of the timescales involved in this review?
Yeah, what we'd be looking to do is take a report back to leadership team. What's been agreed is the report will go back to leadership team. We're hoping before Christmas, aren't we? We're still doing some further baseline work on the budget and some comparative work with other local authorities. And then once that's gone back to leadership team for agreement to proceed with the detailed outputs, then we would look to start implementing and provide a timescale in there for implementing the different changes. So, for example, we could, it's very much dependent on when contracts are due for renewal, for example. And at the moment, all contracts will be looked at on an individual basis. And then when they're up for renewal, we would look to try and dovetail all of those things together. And so there may be different timescales for implementation for each of the action points, but we would look to implement them as soon as physically possible so that the savings can be maximised and can be effected as quickly as possible.
Should that be January, February?
Well, a lot of it we would hope, we would want to put things in place where we can for the 1st of April, for the 15-16 financial year, but contractually that might not be possible in terms of procurement, etc. But what we are looking to do is Welsh Government have got a small innovative fund which we will be able to put a business case forward to bid for a small amount of money for some consultancy assistance. So we'd look to put a business case in for that January, and hopefully we'll have some funding then to look at the second stage of the review, which could potentially be something that's much more integrated, maybe one unit potentially, that's much more integrated across the council, so that you're able to facilitate the types of contracts we just spoke about where social services and education and concessionary fares can be considered in one specific contract.
Nothing to add.
Thank you. Alan Williams, will you take the next one? I think some of this question has already been answered, but...
I think so, Chair, but I'll make it anyway.
Yes, yeah, please.
In the background to the report, you make reference to the way transport is currently run, the savings opportunities that can be made, and also the benefits of carrying out the exercises. Are you telling us that it's your intention to actually carry out all of these exercises as a part of the review? That those three elements will be covered? I'll give you the three elements again then if you want to. The way transport is currently run, the savings opportunities that could be made, and the benefits of carrying out the exercises.
Yeah, that underlies all of the work that we're doing. I mean, I think, further in the report it talks about an integrated transport unit, which we haven't got. We are disintegrated, if you like, at the moment. So bringing it all together has proved in Newport and other authorities that you can bring together. And those three elements would be underpinning that approach, if you see what I mean. Yeah.
I think that question came from point 4, 4.5, 4.4, 4.6 and 4.7. So all those are part of your review. That's what we were asking. Thank you very much. Councillor Evans, do you want to take the next question?
Yes, Chair. How will you ensure that the proposals put forward will deliver operational outcomes in an economic, environmental and social sustainable manner?
That's a difficult one. Obviously, in taking the decisions in terms of what we do, one would hope that those three elements would be underpinned. They would be considerations within, and you're always going to have to balance those against each other. But I think overall, what's been proven from other areas, there are financial savings, there are savings in fuel, so environmentally that's a good thing. In terms of social, and I would say that would be the impact on the user predominantly. We'd be looking to ensure that the services that we remodel, in largest part, don't impact upon those people, that they get a better system. For example, as Joe said, if a bus is travelling down the valley and we've got an education contract, one coming down, a subsidised bus and a contract one, if we can draw those together, that saves money. But the result for the individual is the same. I can't say there won't be issues from a social standpoint and choices that members will have to make. I don't know what they are at the moment, but there may be some choices within this where those impacts have to be balanced against savings. But that's something that we come back to you on as we work through.
I kind of raised this question in the envisioning thing, and it was around the sustainability issues, things like better forms of transport and the health and well-being aspects can have to come in about things like global warming, amounts of vehicle movements, that sort of thing. I mean, you obviously kind of raised it there in a way.
I think
and alternative forms of transport even.
The biggest cost is fuel, and one of the biggest contributors to global warming is fuel. So the more that you can get that down, the better. In terms of different forms of transport, obviously, we'd want to encourage people to use those. But I mean, you've got to balance that. If officers use bikes, for example, to do a site visit in Glenavon, you probably wouldn't see them for a couple of weeks. So I'm I'm taking that a bit far, but you have to balance efficiency against those sort of features.
I think there is another thing there, really, from an environmental point of view, Duncan, is I suppose the carbon footprint. If we're going to reduce journeys and tie in more convenient journeys, there should be a reduction there in the carbon footprint, I would have thought.
Well, I was going to bring something up. Changing school hours to improve vehicle utilisation. How are you going to go about that? Because I think that will be very emotive, for the schools.
An idea that was put in. It's something that Rondicon and Taft did when they reorganised theirs. And obviously it's got to be agreed with the schools. The schools are it's the governors, it's the headmasters who sets that. So this would have to be done by agreement. But from the RCT standpoint, I don't know whether in Torvine we would necessarily have the same issues that they have in RCT in terms of travel and use of buses. For example, use of buses, a bus for several journeys in the morning, if you see what I mean, rather than... So I don't know whether we'll hit that. I felt it was worth putting into the report, though, because it may be something that we come up with, and alerting members quickly, early on to that, I think is important. And it may be something that may give us a big saving if schools were opening at different times, and transport could work around that. It may do. We haven't done enough research to say it will, but I'm just putting that as a potential.
It'll take some time to organise if you do get there, because I think the schools will rebel against that in the beginning. Do you think? Can you see that?
I think it really depends on approach. I mean, if you go in with a diktat, then anybody's going to rebel. If you go in with a reasoned argument across the board, and I think that's the way we'd want to approach it, then hopefully you get reason back. Because this saving could go, it could go into education, make education better. So, you've got to balance, it's a balance.
Yeah, I'm not against it. And I'm looking at all the pitfalls, that I could see coming.
I think in terms of it says in the report that the easy things have been done. It's the hard ones that we have to do. And it's the contracts, and it's working those contracts around school hours. It's going to take time for us to do, to get all that, meshing that together is going to be very difficult. And that's the point that we would, if we felt a change in school hours would make a difference, that's the point we'd have to broach it with governors.
Very briefly, I went out last week or the week before with the secret shopper on the bins, and one of the things I noticed about the more modern bin lorries and the recycling lorries, they don't go back to the depot so much, and they take big volumes of plastic because of the compacting units. That's got to be a saving in money, and it's got to be more efficient. So it's things like that when you're replacing fleet. It's important.
Yeah.
Replacement more modern buses that don't have same issues. Yes, and Duncan's going to love this. How will you ensure that the active travel beer is adhered to and taken into consideration while carrying out this review? Back to your bikes again.
Sorry.
The active travel bill.
Oh, right.
Bikes and walking.
We are a business. We have to operate as a business, and whilst we'd want to, integrate cycling where possible, walking where possible into the actions. This is about what people do when they come into the office and they go out and they do things and what have you. There are certain areas where we can intervene and do things. There are certain areas, I think, members would agree, it would be totally inefficient to have an officer walking or cycling. So, it's. I hope I'm answering your question, because I'm being.
Read it?
Pardon?
Pardon me asking. Have you actually read that? It's encouraging,
no, I haven't.
Encouraging businesses to get, where possible, and to get people to walk and cycle.
No, and
no, I appreciate you.
And I go along with that, and the council at the moment encourage people to, where possible, cycle to work and make provision and what have you. But what I'm saying is, I agree, and I know the thrust. I haven't read the bill, but I know the thrust of it. But it's about that has to be balanced against efficiency of operation, And that's got to be our key aim has got to be how we operate and how efficiently we operate. I think that's got to come probably at the top.
And as a wider thing to that, Chair, if I might just add to that, Michelle Mitchell's our transportation group leader in neighbourhoods, and she wrote this report. Michelle will be able to tell you a lot more about it, but Michelle is heavily involved in developing the regional local transport plan, which is about to go out for consultation, and also obviously the active travel bill as part of that. And the Council, as a wider picture, will be investing.
Right, thank you. Any more questions on that? Right. I'll ask a question now. Will you be contacting Torfaen Community Transport as part of the review to see if they can provide transport services that can benefit Torfaen?
Yes, absolutely. We already work, as you probably know, with Torfaen Community Transport in terms of the concessionary fares. In fact, they've been brought in as part of one of the subsidised bus services that they now operate through the Hentless route, as you probably know. So, yes, they will, Michelle will definitely be speaking with them directly about that and about possibilities around wider community transport to link in with this review.
Right, thank you. Are there any other questions members would like to ask on this? Because really, this is at the beginning, isn't it? You haven't taken the journey yet, really, to do it. Well, you can't ask questions when things haven't happened, but it's the intention. They've said they're going to carry out all these things, which I think is quite commendable. Right.
But it's also, time is of the essence in many respects because you're hoping to feed it into the budget exercise as far as possible. So I was just wondering, perhaps the final question is, when do you think you'll be able to report back to the leadership team with, and whether we can be slotted into that process at an appropriate time? Because our next meeting is in January, isn't it? Is that a possibility? Have we discussed that already? I can't remember. No.
Yes, January, our next meeting. Well, after that.
The bid to the Assembly for monies, grant monies. Just as an aside, Newport used consultants and they paid 10% of their savings to those consultants. So they paid 300,000 to the consultants to get where they got to. But let me say, Newport is still using those consultants in other areas under the same methodology. Members of both the Conservative and the Labour administrations have work has already been done. But I think maybe the task we've got in terms of the contract is going to be great, and we're going to need help on that. And we're going to be reliant on the Welsh Government giving us some money to put in. We're confident we can get that money. Now, how quickly we can get to a result on that, and then how quickly they can slot in to the old savings programme is difficult to say. So I prefer not to go for January if there's some time.
Ask a question, Chair, about you touched on the subject of contracts earlier. Are they let at the end of the financial year? Or is there any consequence to us if we shorten the contract then?
Well, that very much depends at the moment. As we said in the report, we alluded to the separate contracts being run by separate service areas and those things not being joined up. So at the moment, where we're at the moment is colleagues in social care and housing, in education, and of course within neighbourhoods, are pulling together lists of all of the contracts that they've got and their renewal dates. Now, they're not very rarely are they going to fall on a financial year basis, and most of them are going to have been let piecemeal on an individual basis. So, for example, Social Care and Housing have got an operator, sort of a taxi agreement with a taxi operator. That is one contract, and then that is due for renewal, I think, in a year or so. But there are other contracts within education that we're collating that information for, and then the Joint Passenger Transport Unit administer contracts for Torfaen in terms of concessionary fares and bus subsidies. So where we're at the moment is drawing all of that together, bringing all of that into a timeline, and then not letting any new contracts where we can extend those contracts under the existing contractual obligations that we have. So that's what I was saying earlier on about not preempting and not closing down any doors, because if we do let contracts now, it's going to affect the ability to pull together all of those things that need to come together to make the savings happen, particularly with the procurement contracts.
Right, thank you very much. Are there any more questions from members? No? Would you, Duncan, or Joe like to add anything that you think would benefit us knowing? No? Right, I thank you both for coming, and I do apologise again for keeping you waiting. But thank you very much. We do appreciate you coming and your time. Thank you. After we make the recommendations for the transport part of the scrutiny, Christina Harry is going to pop in, and she's coming in to discuss what is best for us to scrutinise at our next meeting, you know, for timescales. Okay? So we'll go into the recommendations first for the transport.
Sorry, Chair. I take your point that Christina's coming in to discuss.
Yeah.
And from her point of view, she thinks it's best for us to scrutinise, is it? It's our decision at the end of the day.
Well, it's going to the work programme. Okay?
Do you want me to?
Yes, if you want.
We've got the basket of items that were agreed by yourselves in visioning. And out of those, we've obviously got to decide which report we take to the next meeting, which will be the 21st of January. That means that the first meetings that the Chair and whoever the report author will be the beginning of December, where they start writing the report. So what we need from Christina is her viewpoint to share with you as to which ones she thinks are best time-wise to go, which link in with things like cabinet decisions and all those sorts of things, so that you can make a decision then whether you choose to take that one or you question her on any of the others if you don't feel that that's appropriate.
It's not changing, it's what we agreed before, but which one is deemed to be the most urgent for us to look at. Right, we'll go into our recommendations. And the key question was, again, what areas should be covered in the review, and are there any alternative models that can be considered? What are your views? Yes, yeah. Well, it's only just started. If they say they're going to do everything that's in the report, I think it's quite a thorough review of the situation. What anybody else thinks?
I think we should take reassurance from the way in which they're carrying it out has been described. I think it does look as though the questions and doubts we had will be covered better than covered when we thought they might not be. The one question in my mind is that whilst all this is going on, bearing in mind that we're talking about the Blaenau Gwent joint passenger unit, to me that begs the question, why are we doing this on our own, given we're going to have a decision fairly soon about whether or not we start talking with Blaenau Gwent about joining up as two local authorities into one, effectively. There's a few hurdles to be overcome before we get to that point. Most notably, I suppose, the Minister for Public Service. But it would be really good if Blaenau Gwent were doing much the same, I suppose is what I'm saying. But perhaps we need to make that point separately in another place to the leadership. That, you know, if we're going along this route of looking at services from a collaborative point of view with another authority, this one seems to us, it seems to me anyway, to be one which would be a good candidate. And yeah, but yeah, there's a wide-ranging number of services which could be subject to the same comment, I suppose, in consideration. But yeah,
we could ask in a recommendation for them to ask us why they're not collaborating with Blaenau Gwent at the moment. Well, they are in a way. They are in a way, aren't they? Yeah, yeah.
Of the pre-existing link, whether or not it is feasible to link Blaenau Gwent in. Yeah.
Right. Any other points? I think they're making some brave initiatives if they pull it off.
I would also like innovative ways, taking into account global warming and stuff like that. I've still to hammer that one, because that's not a thing they've got much choice over either, with the future generations and all that stuff, because it's quite a serious, you know, the environmental considerations. That's Welsh law as well.
You're thinking of the battery cars, the electric?
All of it.
Yes, yeah. But
it's Welsh legislation.
Yeah, but I don't think we can sort of expect them to change their vehicles now. But to look to the future, yes.
And especially
but it is for the
if we
future.
work in collaboration with Blaenau Gwent, I mean, it's got to be part of it. Bearing in mind that transport is part of the problem.
Well, yeah, are we going back a bit? I thought we discussed that with Duncan, and Duncan had said...
He would look at it,
yeah. Yeah, so we note that. I mean, again, we don't anticipate what they come up with.
Right. Any other ideas?
It's a work in
That's
progress,
okay.
isn't it?
It's a work in progress, yes.
I think it's very well made.
Have you got a few points down now?
Yeah, so overall, based on what they've put in the report and what they've said today, points 4.5 to 4.7 were the ideas that they suggested that they would be looking at. Obviously, they've not confirmed that all of them will be done, but that's what the route they're taking. Yeah. I think what they want to know from you as a committee is whether or not at this early stage you promote what they're saying so far and you support that, that you think that it's the right approach to take. And from what you've said, I've written down that you think that from the details they've put forward, it indicates that there's going to be a thorough review, which you're pleased about. I've got down to do with the pre-existing link with the joint passenger unit, for them to look into opportunities to work together through that and to look to see what Blaenau Gwent are doing if they're carrying out similar exercises. And just to take into account that sustainability is an important factor in any of the reviews that they carry out, and that you would like an update back when they're at a further point in time to report back to the committee. Do you think that covers?
I think that's excellent, yes. Everybody agree?
Well, the only other thought was, and I was thinking really that for you, Chair, is perhaps something that you could deal with. Getting, given that it ain't going to be in January, given that it's got to be implemented, or at least we would hope for implementation during the next financial year, which means they've got to reach some conclusions before the budget is set for the next financial year. It may be difficult to get it back into a scrutiny committee convenient for us, but this is the sort of topic which could be dealt with under a joint scrutiny meeting. And I just think we ought to be prepared to have this reported back to joint scrutiny if it's not convenient to report back to this particular meeting.
Or we could hold a special scrutiny for it, Yeah. Because the joint one is usually pretty busy, isn't it? Yeah, we could have a special one.
Well, what I said was really I was happy for you as chair, obviously with the appropriate officers, and if appropriate with other scrutiny chairs to be able to determine that.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Right. Any other suggestions or recommendations? Right. Thank you.
Should be outside now.
Yeah, right. Christina should be there. So I won't be keeping you much longer. Thank you. Hello. Thank you very much for coming, Christina. Welcome. And I think you're going to advise us now which is the best item to take out of the basket that we chose a few weeks ago. Right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Hope you've enjoyed the items this afternoon. In terms of the next meeting, what would be very helpful in terms of timing is the cemeteries rules and regulations. Just to remind you the background of that, we've enforced heavily the existing rules and regulations, and it has prompted a public reaction, which we are dealing with on an individual case-by-case basis. But we are working currently with a group of citizens around rescoping the rules and regulations with a view to bringing that into Council early in the new year for Council consideration. And I think what would be really helpful if scrutiny were able to input into that work that we're currently doing. I think it would be a great opportunity for you to actually go out and have a look at the cemeteries so that you can, see and feel the issues that we as officers are grappling with currently. It's a very difficult one, a very emotive one, but nevertheless it's a policy, a very important policy, which we will be bringing into full Council in the new year.
Thank you. Can I have the thoughts of the committee? It will be a difficult one and very emotive, as you say, but it is very important.
I feel, Chair, that it is a very emotive subject, as you say, and I think it should be dealt with as soon as possible, really, so that it can be resolved, perhaps in some sort of way.
I think it's just the sort of thing that scrutiny needs to deal with, and if we got the opportunity, then we ought to take it.
Right. The other two members agree? We all agree? Yeah. Okay then. Right, we will do that, Christina. And we'll have to make arrangements to go around the cemeteries.
Yeah, which I'll happily do via Cass. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you for that, because that's really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming. And short and sweet this time. Short and sweet this time. Yes, thank you. Right, thank you, Christina. Right, the last item, date of next meeting, which we know is the 21st of January, and I think we're going to be busy before then. And, do you want to say anything, Stuart? No? Yes, we're going around cemeteries, yes, yeah. Well, we have to, to really do it well. We need to know what's happening in them and, what they expect of us.
We've had quite a bit of information, and alongside that, Jay, at various seminars and it's been taken to community councils as well. So we've got quite a lot of information, but I think, excuse the pun, to go on the ground is all important.
Yes. Yeah. So I thank you all for your contributions this afternoon and lasting out. Not like some of them, they've disappeared. Thank you very much, and I close the meeting.